Chapter 2256. For the rest of the day, Lu Yin remained in the third extremity, waiting for the students to emerge. Although the third extremity was a hopeless area, the mortality rate was not high. After all, this was a place for the Wang family's disciples to train. Rather than calling it training, it was more of an opportunity for them to obtain resources. Mr. Wei and Mr. Tang had arrived as well. In the distance, half-ancestor Chai Wang Yan and the rest of the Wang family's upper echelons were also present. More students should emerge in the next few days. Just as he was thinking about this, a flower petal moved. It was the upper astral despair realm, and only explorers or hunters were allowed to enter. Of the 100 students who had come out to train, nearly half of them had entered the upper astral despair realm, including Bai Nan, the stuttering fatty, and the others. Of the 5 groups of students who had access to sourcebox arrays, 3 groups had entered the upper astral despair realm, while 2 groups had entered the lower astral despair realm. A figure rushed out from the flower petals, stumbling and almost falling. He looked quite miserable. It was the stuttering little fatty. Everyone stared at little fatty. Fatty's clothes were mostly torn, and there were obvious bite marks on his arm. He limped to his feet, and when he saw everyone staring at him, he opened his mouth and said, It's inside. I found it. What did you meet? Wang Yan asked in a gentle tone. He wanted to show some concern and comfort the fatty's wounded soul. The fatty had clearly suffered a great loss and was in a miserable state inside. Wang Yan remembered that he had encouraged the fatty before he had entered the trial. The fatty subconsciously looked at Wang Yan. Dog. Everyone fell silent. Wang Yan's face went from red to white, then back to red. He suppressed his anger and gritted his teeth. What did you say? The fatty was startled. Don't misunderstand. I was bitten by a dog. It chased me for half a day. Only then did Wang Yan's expression ease. Half-ancestor Chai was not in the mood to talk to the fatty. Lu Yin stepped forward and checked the fatty's body. Good, it's just a superficial wound. It's fine as long as you're fine. Mr. Tang asked, Did you get anything? Little fatty blinked and looked at Wang Yan. Dog. Everyone was speechless. Wang Yan's eyebrows twitched. The fatty continued, There's something on the dog's body that's qualified to be groomed. He then took out a metal object that looked like a medallion and showed it to everyone. The metal object couldn't be considered to be beautiful. It wasn't meticulously made, and the number 4 was engraved on it. The Wang family's qualifications for nurturing emissaries were from the lowest to the highest, a 20-cycle enlighter. This was the lowest qualification for nurturing emissaries, and it could be obtained in the lower Achilles heel. The metal object that represented the qualifications for nurturing emissaries was engraved with a number of 1, followed by a 30-cycle enlighter, a 40-cycle enlighter, and a peak enlighter. The highest qualifications for nurturing emissaries corresponded to numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively. In other words, the metal object that the little fatty had obtained indicated that he had the qualifications to be nurtured at the peak of the enlighter realm. This was an existence that was second only to the highest training qualification in the third impasse, and the highest training qualification could only be obtained in the Tai impasse. In other words, the little fatty had obtained the best thing in the upper impasse. However, whether or not this was the best option was still up for debate. After all, there was still the Wang family's meditative oblivion technique in the upper acorn realm. If the little fatty was absolutely certain that he could reach the peak of the enlighter realm, then there was no need for the Wang family to nurture him. The value of this nurturing qualification naturally could not compare to the value of the meditative oblivion technique. Half-ancestor Chai praised, Not bad. My Wang family will definitely nurture you into a peak enlighter. Lu Yin patted the fatty's shoulder. Congratulations, you must have gone through a lot. The little fatty looked up at Lu Yin. Sir, I can do it myself. Lu Yin smiled. I know that you can do it yourself, but it's not bad to have the Wang family's help. If you can reach the peak of the enlighter realm on your own, then it would be better to obtain the meditative oblivion technique. What a pity, Mr. Tang said. In the distance, half-ancestor Chai and the rest did not mind. It was just a qualification to nurture a peak enlighter, and it was not difficult for the Wang family to nurture a peak enlighter. The meditative oblivion technique? I have it. The little fatty took out a jade stone and his eyes lit up. Lu Yin was surprised. This is the meditative oblivion technique? The little fatty happily handed it over to Lu Yin. Sir, look. Half-ancestor Chai and the rest looked at the jade stone in the little fatty's hand and exchanged astonished glances. That really looks like a jade stone recorded in my Wang family's meditative oblivion technique. How lucky is this little fatty to obtain it? Some of the higher-ups of the Wang family discussed in low voices. One of the higher-ups beside them was jealous. My son has been in there for so long, but he still hasn't found the meditative oblivion technique. There are at most 2 jade stones recorded in the upper impasse, but this little fatty actually obtained one. What a waste. What a waste. Ha, good, very good. Since you've obtained the meditative oblivion technique, then work hard and cultivate it. The culinary god was delighted. Before the trial had begun, he had not expected anyone to obtain the technique. The Wang family was not stupid, so how could they allow the technique to be passed to outsiders? This was much more valuable than any qualification to nurture someone, and he had never expected that the little fatty would actually obtain it. Wang Yan's face turned ugly. How had this little fatty obtained it? Before the trial had begun, the Wang family had arranged to hide the meditative oblivion technique in a location that was the hardest to find in the impasse. They had not taken it away because they were worried that news of it would leak out and cause the family to lose face. After all, they were facing the culinary god, and who knew if he would be thick-skinned enough to inspect it. The Wang family did not want to fall out with them now. They had clearly hidden it well, but it had still been found. This should not be possible. How did you get it? Wang Miao was curious. The little fatty laughed heartlessly. It fell off a dog's body. The crowd was speechless as only the heavens knew what had happened. Wang Miao laughed and patted the little fatty's head. Kid, you have a bright future ahead of you. Hee. The little fatty was embarrassed and his face turned red. This sister was too beautiful and he was too embarrassed to look at her. He turned to look at Wang Yan. Thank you for the encouragement. Wang Yan's face looked as if he had just swallowed a fly. The first little fatty to come out had not only obtained the right to be nurtured, but he had also obtained the meditative oblivion technique. This made the Wang family's faces turn ugly, but they still enthusiastically congratulated him. The resources had already been lost, but they had to achieve their goal. This little fatty had to belong to the Wang family. An hour after the little fatty came out, another person came out. This was a Hunter Realm student with a decent innate gift. To have such a cultivation at such a young age, he could be ranked among the top in Xian Academy. Unfortunately, his luck was not good. Not only had he been heavily injured, but he had also not obtained anything. Mr. Tang sighed and lamented that luck and power were both indispensable. The Wang family's consolation was very sincere, but this student had a depressed look on his face, especially after he found out about the little fatty's gains. He wanted to bang his head against a wall. Following this, more and more students came out. There were students from both the upper and lower astral zones. Finally, the first group of students who had used the source box array to enter came out. They were all in high spirits. Sir, we obtained the right to be nurtured and there's more than one of us. Sir, we obtained a power vessel. Sir, we... Wang Yan's face twitched as he listened to the students report their gains to Lu Yin. Shouldn't they be thanking the Wang family? It was the Wang family who had given them this opportunity. What a bunch of ingrates. Lu Yin happily praised them. These fellows were not stupid and they had not completely relied on themselves. Instead, they had cooperated with the other students and allowed the other students to search for resources. They had taken action and their gains had been great. They had obtained 6 nurturing qualifications, and there were only 36 in the entire upper astral zones. More and more students came out from the upper and lower astral zones. Finally, some students came out from the Taya Despair. The Taya Despair corresponded to an Enlighters cultivation, and Xian Academy only had 6 Enlighters. Bai Weiwei, Xia Shengguang, Qing Feng, Lu Kei, Jin Zhongshan, and Nong Xinyang. The first to come out was Bai Weiwei, as light as the clouds. What did student Bai obtain? Mr. Tang asked curiously. Everyone looked at Bai Weiwei. Bai Weiwei smiled. I just strolled around. I didn't get anything. Everyone had strange looks. Only a ghost would believe her. However, the Wang family did not require the students to show what they had obtained after coming out, and they could not search the students' cosmic rings. Since Bai Weiwei had said so, they could only believe her. To Bai Weiwei, the Taya Despair was still very attractive. There were secret techniques and tribulation crystals inside, but she had not obtained any of them. The Wang family must have hidden them away. Not long after, Jin Zhongshan, Qing Feng and Xia Shenguang came out one by one, all of them saying that they had not obtained anything. They did not care about the Wang family's nurturing qualifications at all. They were more concerned about the secret techniques and tribulation crystals. If they had obtained these things, how could they say that they had obtained them? Lu Kai came out and so did Wang Xiaofan. All of them were silent and Wang Yan wanted to slap them. These guys actually said that they had not obtained anything. How was that possible? He couldn't wait to enter the despair to see what was missing. In the end, all the students came out. Not a single one was missing, and the students with the most serious injuries had only suffered superficial wounds. The students' gains were not small, especially the 5 groups of students who had been protected by the sourcebox array. They had managed to obtain 43 cultivation qualifications. The total number of qualifications within the Triaju region was 108, and they had obtained 43. The rest of the students had obtained 22 in total, which meant that they had obtained 65 qualifications, which was more than half of what they had obtained. Since the establishment of the Triple Despair, no one had obtained so many qualifications, and that was not even counting the other resources. But when it came to the meditative forgetting art, secret techniques and tribulation crystals, other than the little fatty, everyone else said that they had not obtained anything. The little fatty's expression turned ugly and he looked up at Lu Yin. Sir, was I too careless? Lu Yin coughed and wanted to say, "It's okay. Senior Food God will protect you." The little fatty was nervous and the flesh on his face trembled. He could sense that the people from the Wang family were all harboring evil intentions. Their gazes were sharp, and it was as if they were trying to force him to hand over the meditative forgetting art. The little fatty was overthinking things. Even though the Wang family would never allow the meditative forgetting art to be passed on to outsiders, they could not do anything to him at the moment. Even if they wanted to pull him into the Wang family, they would only raise conditions. Otherwise, who would dare enter the Triple Despair to train in the future? The Wang family would then have one less asset to attract outsiders. The academy students had obtained nurturing qualifications, which meant that they could choose to borrow the Wang family's resources to cultivate at any time. Not only would this be helpful to their cultivation, but it would also be a guarantee if they encountered any danger in the outside world. It meant that they were half a Wang family member. Chapter 2257. The Wang family did not force these students to stay, as they still needed to go to the other 3 families to gain experience. Wang Yan watched the paper boat fly towards Dragon Mountain with envy. If only I could have gone to the other families to gain experience. He was the branch family head and had access to resources, so he did not need to worry about reaching the emissary level. However, he did not know much about the other 3 families of the 4-way scales. Being able to train with the 4-way scales at the same time was also a type of opportunity. However, this was a special case and it was only targeted at these students. Once these students were completely roped in by the 4-way scales, Xian Academy would become a mere figurehead. This would cause the teachers and students of Xian Academy to be at odds with each other. Things had been going smoothly, but unfortunately Yu Hao had messed things up. The students were only grateful to Yu Hao after leaving San Despair, and those who had obtained the right to be trained by the sourcebox array had given their extra rights to other students. It was all thanks to Yu Hao that the Wang family's efforts to rope in these students had been wasted. Wang Yan did not know how to explain this to the others. After bidding farewell to the Wang family, the culinary god was in a good mood and praised Lu Yin to the point that Lu Yin felt embarrassed. "This is what I should do. As a mentor, I naturally need to help my students," Lu Yin said humbly. The culinary god laughed. Not only did the Wang family lose resources, but they also did not receive any gratitude from the students. They suffered a loss in silence. Mr. Haoyu has contributed greatly to the academy, and he has even fought for these students' benefits. I'm sure that they will not forget you in the future. Mr. Tang also praised, "I've always heard that sourcebox arrays can do things that even progenitors might not necessarily be able to do. Today was an eye-opener. Most of the lockbreakers in the Cosmic Tree Academy are at the front of the battlefield, and even if there are lockbreakers outside, they are monopolized by the various great families. It's almost impossible to see a lockbreaker, let alone an Empyrean array master." Mr. Haoyu's lock-breaking ability shocked even the Wang family. Lu Yin was curious. I heard that the dean is also an Empyrean array master. Why doesn't he teach lock breaking? Mr. Tang replied, if you want to learn lock breaking, you can apply to go to the lockbreaker headquarters at the back of the battlefield. The academy does not specifically teach lock breaking. Mr. Haoyu's research involves lock breaking, which is why he teaches lock breaking. Even Little Wen's lock breaking ability is learned at the back of the battlefield. Why is that? Lu Yin was puzzled. The culinary god looked at the mother tree. Someone has to be sacrificed for the race, and that's how lockbreakers are. These are the rules. All lockbreakers, even origin array masters who are consecrated by the four-way scales, must experience life and death on the battlefield on the backside. They cannot stay in outer space for long periods of time. These are the rules that Ancestor Hui set. However, Lu Yin had been to the battlefield on the other side of the battlefield, and he knew that the lockbreakers did not really want to stay there. They had been forced to do so, and they had been forced to do so by the rules of the battlefield. They could only enjoy themselves for a limited amount of time. Lu Yin had been to the Outerverse battlefield before, and he knew that the lockbreakers did not really want to stay there. He deeply remembered the first time he saw Master Zhan on the battlefield at the back. He had been served by several maids, which was completely out of tune with the atmosphere of the battlefield. Now that he thought about it, it was more like a silent protest. They wanted to return to the starry sky of trees and live a normal life as cultivators, but because of their identities, they could only stay on the backside of the battlefield, and that was all they could do. Lu Yin was beginning to understand more and more why the cultivators on the other side of the battlefield were accommodating to the lockbreakers. It was not only because of the lockbreakers' strength but also because they sympathized with them. Lockbreakers had a transcendent status, but they had to endure even more. This was very similar to the experience of the Lu family. There are no lockbreakers in the Fifth Mainland. Despite this rule, they were never afraid of death, and they had never retreated from the battlefield. Next up is the White Dragon clan. They don't have as deep a foundation as the Wang family, but they still have the ability to take action. Let's see how far they can go, Mr. Tang said. As they spoke, a giant creature broke through the void and flew over. It was burning with flames as it let out a deafening roar. Its two heads stared at them with a ferocious gaze. Lu Yin raised his brows. Wasn't this Ho Long Kuei's mount? Long Kuei had joined the expedition to the starry sky of trees, and Lu Yin had wondered why he had not seen Ho. He had thought that it had died, but it turned out that it had been left behind. The students were all amazed when they saw Ho. Even in the starry sky of trees, it was not easy to become an envoy. Ho was an envoy, and it was even a mount. Both men and women envied it and hoped to obtain such a mount. Long Tian stood on Ho's back, and he personally came to the Wang family's mainland to welcome them. Junior Long Tian greets Senior Food God. Long Tian stood on Ho's head and bowed respectfully. On the paper boat, Nong Xinyang's eyes widened. Lu Kei's fighting spirit rose. Qing Feng took a deep breath and felt the pressure. Long Tian, one of the former members of the Four Scions, was finally here. Bai Weiwei and the others looked at Long Tian. They did not care about the elders, but Long Tian was only one generation older than them. According to the Daoist sect's era, they were still considered to be in the same generation, and they could still compete with each other. In the current starry sky of trees, Xia Shenfei and Long Tian stood at the peak of their generation. Yixian Academy's attitude towards the four cardinal scales was not good, but they had a better impression of the White Dragon tribe. In the end, the White Dragon tribe had not participated in many matters. It was not that they did not want to, but rather that they did not have the ability or background. The result was that the White Dragon tribe was the easiest to talk to in the four cardinal scales. The food god's attitude towards Long Tian was not as cold as Wang Yan's attitude towards half-ancestor Chai. Young ancestor Long actually came to welcome you personally. Thank you for your hard work. Long Tian respectfully replied, it's my duty. My father met with a mishap, or else I would have personally come to welcome you. Senior, please. The food god nodded and followed Long Tian to Dragon Mountain. Long Tian did not board the paper boat. Instead, he sat on Ho and flew towards Dragon Mountain. Lu Kei was eager to challenge Long Tian, but Lu Yin stopped him. The current you is not enough. Lu Yin was not concerned about Lu Kei, but he did not want to get too close to Long Tian. The White Dragon tribe was already considered a mutated race, and their lifespan and appearance were different from ordinary people. Lu Ke was sure that his disguise could fool a half-ancestor, but when he thought about his scent he wondered if Long Tian would be able to recognize him. Lu Ke solemnly replied, "I know that I'm not enough but I want to try." Lu Yin felt a headache coming on as this was a stubborn person. "Wait until we reach Dragon Mountain. The White Dragon tribe is welcoming the academy, so this is not the right time." Lu Ke was a battle maniac, but he was not stupid. "I understand." The journey from the Wang family continent to Dragon Mountain was very long, and it was not as short as the journey from the Cloud Ladder to the Wang family continent. The 4 cardinal scales had divided the top realm, so they were naturally quite far from each other. However, no matter how far they were, they would eventually arrive. "I see it. It's Dragon Mountain." Lu Yin looked up with a complicated expression. "Dragon Mount. He's here again." The food god sighed. "Dragon Mount. I went there when I was still in the Central Realm. It's been so many years." Mr. Tang also sighed. He had also been to Dragon Mountain when it was still in the Central Realm. Lu Yin believed that no one was more moved than him, as he had experienced life and death on Dragon Mountain. The White Dragon tribe was similar to the Wang family. When the group from Zhou Xian Academy arrived at Dragon Mountain, the first thing they did was introduce the White Dragon tribe's glorious history. However, the White Dragon tribe's foundation could not compare to the Wang family's, and they did not have an ancestor like Zhongyu who could act as a representative. Although the Wang family was shameless, Zhongyu had played his cards well. Long Tian personally brought the group around Dragon Mountain and described the White Dragon tribe's glory. Unfortunately, the students were still talking about the Wang family continent as the contrast was too great. Long Tian felt that the effect was not good, and he skipped the trip that was supposed to last for a few days. He no longer introduced the history of the White Dragon tribe and instead brought the group to a hidden cave in Dragon Mountain. Before this, Lu Ke had tried to challenge Long Tian, but Long Tian had rejected him. Actually, it was not really a rejection but rather a request to wait. "Still the same. The White Dragon tribe doesn't have any new tricks," Nong Xinyang said as she rolled her eyes when she saw the giant pool of blood in front of them. Lu Yin did not understand. "What's wrong?" Nong Xinyang explained, "The White Dragon tribe can communicate with the ancestral Mang, and that's the only advantage they have over the other 3 families. Actually, in terms of background they can't compare to the frigid Immortal sect, the Seedling Garden or the Lu family. The only reason they're ranked on the 4 cardinal scales is because we don't want to banish the Lu family, and also because they can use the ancestral Mang to turn things around. Their advantage in attracting cultivators with other surnames is also related to the ancestral Mang's blood." At that moment Long Tian's voice rang out. "Everyone, the White Dragon tribe's training is not as time-consuming as the Wang family's, and we don't have to go through life and death situations. Training is very simple." He pointed at the pool of blood. "Go in and soak in it for as long as possible. This is the blood of the ancestral Mang, and cultivators can absorb the substances within the blood to strengthen themselves. The longer they soak in it, the more beneficial it will be to their bodies." Long Tian's words shocked the students. 10 to 20%? That much? Qing Feng asked in disbelief. He had heard of the White Dragon tribe's pool of blood from Qing Chen, but he had never thought that it could increase one's strength by that much. Long Tian was satisfied with the students' reactions. "Not bad. You can ask the culinary god if you don't believe me." The students all looked at the culinary god. Although the culinary god was unwilling to admit it as the pool of blood was too attractive to cultivators, he still said, "That is indeed the case." The students no longer doubted him and they all stared fervently at the pool of blood. He had seen the pool of blood in Long Ke's memories, and he remembered that there was something wrong with it. Back then he had changed his name to Long Qi because he was a member of the White Dragon tribe, so he had never been here before. This place was specially reserved for cultivators with other surnames, and he had used Long Qi's essence blood. When he had first used it there had been an ancestral Mang phenomenon. Now that he thought about it, Long Qi had sacrificed a lot for him. When he saw the fervent gazes of the students, Long Tian's lips curled up. Every realm can be raised once, which is why there are countless cultivators in the astral tree realm. Anyone who understands the pool of blood wants to join my White Dragon tribe, but we also have to select our members. That's why you don't see many cultivators with other surnames on Dragon Mountain. It's not that they don't want to join, but that my White Dragon tribe is unwilling to accept them." He then looked at Lu Quebec. "Didn't you want to challenge me? Come and try. Chapter 2258. No one had expected that Long Tian would suddenly accept Lu Kei's challenge, and they all became even more excited. Lu Kei was rumored to be the most powerful expert of this generation, even surpassing the successor of the Four Directions Libra. He was comparable to the Four Young Masters of the past. Long Tian was originally from the Four Young Masters, so the battle between the two of them was something that even the culinary god was interested in. He kept his distance from Long Tian, afraid that he'd be discovered. He looked at the blood pool, then back at Long Tian. No wonder he'd rejected the challenge before, and now he'd accepted the challenge. Lu Kei was Long Tian's test subject to attract the students. The culinary god and the others also realized that Mr. Tang did not want Lu Kei to take action. However, Lu Kei did not care why Long Tian suddenly accepted the challenge. He had been looking for the Four Young Masters for a long time. Xianxia had been hiding in the Unbounded Realm and Long Tian had been staying in Dragon Mountain. He had no chance to come in contact with them. Now that he had the chance to fight, how could he give up? When everyone arrived outside the cave, Long Tian and Lu Kei faced each other. Long Tian's expression was calm and there was a faint smile on his face. Compared to the cold and aloof Long Tian back in the days of the Four Young Masters, the current Long Tian was more like an elder. "You're a junior, you go first," said Long Tian. Lu Kei did not hold back. His long sword flew out from its scabbard and flew in front of him. He raised his hand and grabbed it. In just one step, the sword tip had already arrived in front of Long Tian. Except for a limited number of people, the rest could not see the sword clearly, including Nong Xinyang and Qing Feng. Only now did they realize how fast Lu Kei's sword was. Back in Xian Academy, Lu Kei had never truly fought. Now facing the fourth young ancestor, this was his peak sword technique. Long Tian calmly looked at Lu Kei's sword coming from the west. A long spear had appeared in his hand out of nowhere, but he didn't thrust it out. Instead, he used it to block in front of him. Lu Kei's sword collided with the tip of Long Tian's spear. With a bang, ripples appeared in the void and spread out in all directions. Then the void shattered into pieces. Lu Kei's sword was deflected, and the tip of the sword pierced towards Long Tian from above. Long Tian held the spear in his hand and spun it rapidly, forming an impenetrable defense around him. Lu Kei attacked 3 times in an instant, but none of his sword managed to pierce through the defense of Long Tian's spear. Instead, it was pushed away by Long Tian's vibrating force. Lu Yin watched Long Tian attack. Compared to several decades ago, the current Long Tian was much more stable and powerful. Even though he was only at the first Origin Tribulation stage, his true battle prowess was no less than someone at the third Origin Tribulation stage. Lu Kei was far inferior to Long Tian. Lu Kei took a few steps back and stared at Long Tian. "I want to fight, not a target." Long Tian's lips curled up. "All right." Just as he finished speaking, his body disappeared. White dragon roaming steps caused Lu Kei's pupils to shrink. He couldn't see where Long Tian was, and he couldn't even find the trajectory of his attack. Lu Kei immediately tore open the void and entered the stellar source universe with his countless battle experiences. Breaking into the astral source universe as an enlighter was something that only the 4 young masters had been able to do. Naturally, Lu Kei could do it as well. He wanted to use the stellar source universe to avoid where he was and at least evade Long Tian's spear. However, the gap between them was too big. When Lu Kei entered the stellar source universe, what appeared in front of him was not the void, but the tip of the spear. He forcefully controlled his body and retreated. Half of his body was distorted in order to avoid the spear. However, Long Tian's spear pressed down and whipped Lu Kei's body. He was pressed into the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. The surrounding crowd was silent. They knew that Long Tian would win, but they didn't expect him to win so easily. He only used one move and Lu Kei couldn't fight back at all. This was Lu Kei, an existence that everyone in the same generation looked up to. Bai Weiwei, Xia Shengguang and Wang Xiaofan all stared at Long Tian in shock. This was the 4 young ancestors? They were clearly stronger than Lu Quebec. They could challenge a first tribulation cultivator, but they couldn't even fight back against the 4 young ancestors. Even if the 4 of them worked together, they still wouldn't be able to make Long Tian struggle, let alone Lu Quebec. Long Tian held his spear and looked down. "Get up. Your sword intent hasn't disappeared. Is this a battle technique?" Bai Weiwei and the others were stunned. The sword intent hadn't disappeared? Lu Yin and the others weren't surprised. 4 sword intents had been left in the void and Lu Ke had just attacked 4 times. It was very strange as each strike had left a sword intent in the void that was invisible to ordinary people. Only experts could sense it. When the dust settled, Lu Ke walked out from the ground. There was blood at the corner of his mouth and his body was visibly torn apart. However, his eyes were filled with excitement. This was the feeling of being crushed without being able to resist. Only in this state could he improve. Long Tian looked at Lu Ke in admiration. Your strength is comparable to what we were back then. It's not enough. Although I didn't fight with you back then, I know it's not enough. Lu Ke's voice changed and his eyes turned cold. He gripped his sword tightly and slashed out. The sword was strange, it was a sword technique. Long Tian stabbed out with his spear. No matter how strange Lu Ke's sword technique was, Long Tian could always find it. The tip of the spear collided with the sword's edge every time. This kind of eyesight was so overwhelming that it was hard to breathe. Qing Feng's breathing stagnated. If he were Lu Ke and Long Tian saw through every move, the pressure he would face would be unimaginable. Lu Ke did not give up and wanted to find Long Tian's weakness. However, up until now, apart from using the White Dragon swimming steps, Long Tian had not used any other battle skills, including the White Dragon race's White Dragon transformation. The White Dragon transformation was the White Dragon race's trump card. There were already 10 sword intents in the void. Long Tian's gaze swept across the area. Is your sword intent enough? Lu Ke leapt up and faced Long Tian's impenetrable defense. He turned his sword and slashed down. At the same time, the 10 sword intents in the void merged into a single sword intent that attached to Lu Ke's blade. This attack was so powerful that even Long Tian took it seriously. This was the first time he was forced to attack Lu Ke's sword, and his spear went up from below. He had never used astral sources to suppress Lu Ke before, and this time was no different. Bang! There was another huge collision. Mr. Tang moved his finger and a domain appeared in front of the students. Otherwise, this collision would have killed everyone who heard it. Lu Ke's 10 sword wills combined into one was very powerful, enough to instantly kill a cultivator at the first tribulation origin stage. However, Long Tian still managed to knock it down. Not only that, but the tip of Long Tian's spear pierced into Lu Ke's body. An inch longer, an inch stronger. Lu Ke's sword was still some distance away from Long Tian. Long Tian was about to say something when his expression suddenly changed. He saw that the gap on Lu Ke's sword had been filled up. The next moment, another gap appeared on Lu Ke's sword, and the 10 sword intents that should have disappeared flashed again. Long Tian subconsciously tried to pull his spear back, but he found that Lu Ke was holding it tightly. A terrifying sense of danger rose behind him. The culinary god Lu Yin and the others stared behind Long Tian. A broken sword had appeared in the astral source universe, and it was the gap on Lu Ke's sword. Using the broken sword to combine 10 sword intents and break through the astral source universe, slashing at Long Tian from behind. This was Lu Ke's trump card. Lu Ke's own strength was enough to kill a cultivator at the first tribulation origin stage, and with this trump card he could kill 2 at the same time. A tribulation origin stage expert. He was worthy of being on par with the former 4th young ancestor. Unfortunately, the gap was still a gap, and even his trump card couldn't hurt Long Tian. Long Tian held the spear with his right hand and grabbed the void with his left, twisting it like a curtain. Finally, the broken sword was caught in his hand and he clamped it between 2 fingers. Many students were shocked. They hadn't expected Lu Ke to have such a move. It was impossible to guard against, and the key was that it came from the astral source universe. Even if Bai Weiwei and the others could temporarily break into the astral source universe like the 4th young ancestor, they wouldn't be able to block this attack that came from the astral source universe and combine 10 sword intents. Once Lu Ke used this move, they would definitely die. At this moment, their fear of Lu Ke rose again and Long Tian was no longer in their range of comparison. This is your hidden trump card? Not bad, Long Tian praised. He hadn't expected Lu Ke to force him to use his innate gift. Lu Ke coughed up blood. I still lost. Long Tian put down his spear and put Lu Ke down. He looked at Lu Ke's weak body and laughed. You don't think you can defeat me, do you? Lu Ke stared at Long Tian. Why not? The 4th young ancestor isn't invincible. Zhou Xian defeated all of you at the same time. Long Tian's expression changed. Lu Xiaoxuan's name was Tepu. The four young masters were said to be invincible among their peers, and that was indeed the case. However, decades ago Lu Xiaoxian had appeared and defeated them in the sovereign realm. That was their humiliation. If Lu Xiaoxian can do it, so can others. Lu Ke was unwilling to give up. Wait until I become an emissary, then I'll challenge you again. Long Tian didn't argue with Lu Quebec. Their thoughts back then were different from Lu Ke's. They also thought that they could defeat Lu Xiaoxian, so they had almost joined the expedition. In the end, only Wang Su had gone. I'll give you one more chance. I know your innate gift is useless. Soak in the ancestral Mang blood. Not only will it increase your strength, but it will also allow you to recover and challenge me again. Lu Ke wasn't stupid. He knew that Long Tian wanted to use this method to attract the Academy's students to join the White Dragon race. Even if I want to challenge you, it will be after I become an emissary. There's no need for that now. Long Tian said indifferently, Lu Xiaoxian knows swordsmanship. Lu Ke's eyes flashed. His swordsmanship is the 13 swords. Lu Ke's expression changed and he was shocked. The 13 swords? Long Tian replied, I can try to imitate Lu Xiaoxuan's swordsmanship. The 13 swords used to be your Lu family's swordsmanship. Don't you want to see it? Lu Ke thought about it and then turned around to enter the cave. He then jumped into the blood pool. Compared to Long Tian, he was more interested in Lu Xiaoxian. That genius had suppressed the four young ancestors and escaped from the astral trees. If there was a chance for him to compete with Lu Xiaoxuan's battle techniques, he would definitely be willing. He hadn't expected Long Tian to use his name to tempt Lu Quebec. When he had first come to the astral trees, he hadn't known the 13 swords at all. He had only learned it after returning to the fifth mainland and merging with Lu Qinjue's body. Long Tian was obviously trying to trick Lu Quebec. The only reason he knew about the 13 swords was because of Lu Tian and Mu Qinjue. Everyone looked at Lu Ke in the blood pool and saw that his injuries were healing at a visible rate. At the same time, the blood flowed into his body, causing his face to pale. It was as if he was enduring something. Chapter 2259. There's ancestral Mang blood in the blood pool. The ancestral Mang is a progenitor, and its blood can improve a cultivator's physique. Conservatively speaking, his power level will increase by 10 to 20% after he comes out. If he absorbs the ancestral Mang blood well, his power level will increase even more, Long Tian said. All of the students looked on expectantly. If Lu Ke could improve, so could they. Who wouldn't want to break through? Lu Yin's lips curled up as he was also looking forward to seeing Lu Ke's condition after he came out. After 2 full days, Lu Ke finally walked out of the blood pool. When he did, there was a faint pressure around his body, and a white stream of air circled around him like the ancestral Mang before disappearing. Long Tian praised, 2 days. It's already not easy for an enlighter to stay in there for even a day. Very few can stay there for 2 days. We can begin. Lu Ke looked at Long Tian as he really wanted to experience the 13 swords. Long Tian's smile did not change and everyone returned to where they had been. Look carefully, this is the technique that Lu Xiaoxian used before the 13 swords. Long Tian still held a spear in his hand as he wanted to use a spear in place of a sword. Lu Xiaoxian had defeated them and this was a shadow that they could not overcome. Even if Lu Xiaoxian had made up the 13 swords, Long Tian still wanted to use a spear in place of a sword to prove that he had not imitated Lu Xiaoxian, but had instead surpassed him. Lu Ke's gaze turned cold. You're looking down on swordsmanship. Long Tian did not mind as Lu Ke's use had already ended. Now it was his time and there was no need to be courteous. He stabbed out with his spear. Didn't you want to see? Lu Ke raised his sword to block, but his body was pushed back by the spear. Long Tian stabbed out again while using the white dragon roaming steps. The same scene as before appeared again. Lu Ke could only retreat when faced with the spear that had come from Astral Source Universe, but this time he forcefully turned the situation around and even had the strength to use his sword to deflect the spear that should have been pressing down on him. Long Tian stabbed his spear into the ground at an angle and across from him, Lu Ke retreated a few steps. He raised his sword and pointed it at Long Tian. This isn't the 13 swords. Long Tian smiled. It is, but the way it's used is different. Lu Ke was furious as he had been used. Long Tian turned to look at the people from Xian Academy. Students, did you see it clearly? It's the same move, but Lu Ke has a different ability to deal with it. This is the effect of the blood pool. The students were able to clearly see the difference in Lu Kei's reaction ability before and after. They now had a clear understanding of the effects of the blood pool. The culinary god was displeased. Long Tian had used the 13 swords to tempt Lu Quebec. After all, Lu Kei was a student of the academy and he had gone overboard. Even if the four-way scales wanted to rope in these students and take over Xian Academy, there was no need for them to show such goodwill. If Lu Yin was the master of the four-way scales, then he would have plenty of ways to rope in these students. Lu Yin did not believe that the four-way scales would not be able to find out the backgrounds of these students. But why was it so strenuous? Temptations, roping in, gifting resources and so on. Now he was even using deception. Although Long Tian's actions reflected the effects of the blood pool, it made the culinary god unhappy. Was it really worth it to offend the culinary god? The culinary god and the others had a good attitude toward the White Dragon clan among the four sides of the balance. Doing so would easily make them hate the White Dragon clan as well. Why would Long Tian do this? It gave Lu Yin the feeling that he was doing everything he could to win over a student. What was their purpose in doing this? It wasn't as simple as just roping in students. Long Tian ignored Lu Quebec. In any case, Lu Kei would not be roped in by the White Dragon race. His goal was just these students. Lu Yin's guess was correct. The four-way scales had plenty of ways to rope in these students, so why would they go through so much trouble? In Long Tian's eyes, he might not even be willing to rope in these students. To the four-way scales, even if they lacked talents, they would not sacrifice resources to rope in these youths. They were doing this for the sake of the quotas. Xian Academy was bound to be controlled by the four-way scales, as they cared about the mountains and seas the most. However, there was only one mountain and sea, and the four-way scales had reached an agreement on how to distribute the quotas. Whoever roped in the most students would receive a larger allocation. At the same time, they also stipulated that they could not use underhanded methods to rope in these students. They could only rely on their own abilities to rope in these students during Xian Academy's training sessions. This way, they avoided conflicts and also did not harm the four-way scale's reputation. At most, they would sacrifice some resources. The number of students roped in would determine the allocation of quotas for the mountain and sea inheritances. This was why the Wang family and the White Dragon clan were doing everything they could to rope in these students. Otherwise, why would they care about these students? Since ancient times, not many progenitors had been born, and they had never thought that they would encounter a second Chongyue. These students had not displayed any aptitude comparable to the four young ancestors, so roping them in was purely a matter of the rules. If the Lu family still controlled the fruit tree astral region, then there would be no such thing. However, the culinary god Dinwen and the others did not know about this rule. Only the four-way scales knew about it. Thus, even the culinary god could not understand why Long Tian had risked defending him by deceiving Lu Kei and showing off the effects of the blood pool. He wanted these students to be attracted, as he was certain that cultivators valued themselves more than anything else. As long as there was a way to increase their cultivation, it did not matter what their standpoint was. The White Dragon clan's foundation was too shallow, and he needed to use the blood pool to attract them. This was their only advantage. The results were as he had expected, and he could see the desire in the students' eyes. They wanted to enter the blood pool, and that was enough. Just as Long Tian was about to organize the students to soak in the pool, Lu Yin walked out. Wait, I feel like there's a problem. Everyone looked at Lu Yin. The culinary god's eyes lit up. Lu Yin had given him a surprise in the Wang family, so could he give them another surprise in the White Dragon clan? He was not afraid of offending the White Dragon clan, as Long Tian's actions had already angered him. If Lu Yin could do something about it, then that would be even better. Long Tian frowned. Mr. Haoyu, my White Dragon clan's blood pool has existed for countless years, and you're saying that there's a problem? Are you questioning my White Dragon race? Lu Yin was amused. Young Master Long Tian, you're too anxious. Is there a problem with the blood pool? Long Tian froze, but he did not speak. Lu Yin continued, but you guessed right. I'm saying that there's a problem with the blood pool. Long Tian's gaze turned cold. Are you doubting my clan's blood pool? As soon as he finished speaking, many white dragons appeared around them, all of them glaring at Lu Yin with unfriendly gazes. Lu Yin did not mind and looked at Lu Quebec. Come here. Lu Kei was very obedient and walked over to Lu Yin. He was also filled with anger towards Long Tian, and he was more than happy for Lu Yin to cause trouble for the White Dragon clan. Lu Yin calmly said, "Attack me." Lu Kei's brows rose and he did not hesitate to stab out. His speed was no slower than when he had faced Long Tian. Lu Yin raised a hand and casually swatted the attack away. "Do you feel any difference between facing me and facing Long Tian?" Lu Kei thought about it and then shook his head. "No." Lu Yin looked at him. "You do." Lu Kei was at a loss. Long Tian sneered. "As expected of a mentor. Everyone else says that there's no difference, but you're forcing it on your student." Lu Yin was indifferent. "I can sense that Lu Kei's internal state is different when you attack him before and after he soaks in the blood pool. He's being suppressed." Long Tian's expression changed slightly, but it only lasted for an instant before he quickly regained his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about." Lu Yin explained, "It's very simple. He's not soaking in the blood pool. He's himself, and although soaking in the blood pool has no effect on his bloodline, there's a layer of substance on his body that absorbs the blood pool. That substance is suppressed when facing you, thus suppressing his state. The more times he soaks in the blood pool, the more obvious this state will become." Long Tian stared at Lu Yin, his eyes filled with unprecedented killing intent. "Do you think that you can slander the White Dragon clan just by spouting nonsense? Mr. Hao Yu, you should know the consequences of slandering the White Dragon clan." Lu Yin raised his head. "My control over astral sources has reached the profound creation realm, and I'm also a realm plane array master. I can sense that although Lu Kei's power level has increased, his body's surface is being suppressed. The difference between you and him is too great, but if he faces an opponent of similar strength and is from the White Dragon clan, then he's finished. He's definitely not your match. Hao Yu, you're courting death by slandering the White Dragon clan." An old woman from the White Dragon clan shouted. In the distance, an old woman from the White Dragon clan walked out and grabbed at Lu Yin. The culinary god's eyes widened. "Impudent." Those two words caused the old woman to spit out blood. Many experts from the White Dragon clan immediately appeared and surrounded the culinary gods group. At the same time, Dragon Mountain Sourcebox Array was activated. The students from Xian Academy paled. Against one of the four scales, the pressure from the White Dragon clan, they seemed insignificant. However, the culinary god's aura quickly swept out. Everyone had assumed that there was no half-ancestor overseeing Dragon Mountain. After all, the culinary god had arrived and a half-ancestor would definitely have come out to greet him. However, the next moment, a half-ancestor's aura roared out and resisted the culinary god's pressure. The culinary god's expression changed, and his eyes were filled with an indescribable chill and killing intent. "Bastard, it's you." Long Tian and the rest of the White Dragon clan had ugly expressions. In the end, they still had to ask that person to come out. The culinary god stared at a corner of Dragon Mountain, and an unparalleled berserk aura accompanied by a frighteningly high temperature soared into the sky. The void distorted as it continuously collapsed and melted. The culinary god then raised his hand and an ordinary-looking blade took shape. It looked like a butcher's knife, and it was even uglier than a normal person's war blade. However, when this blade appeared, everyone's scalps went numb. Lu Yin stared at the culinary god and the butcher's knife that he had raised, and an intense sense of danger made his hair stand on end. He had never seen the culinary god like this before. Mr. Tang's face paled as he had also never seen the culinary god like this before. "Senior, this is Dragon Mountain." Long Tian shouted. The culinary god did not have anyone else in his eyes, and he only stared at a corner of Dragon Mountain. The butcher's knife wrapped in flames viciously descended. Long Tian's expression changed drastically. The other members of the White Dragon clan were shocked, as they had never thought that a butcher's knife would appear on Dragon Mountain one day. "Master, so many years have passed but you still haven't let go. When will you become a half-ancestor?" The speaker was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. His gaze was gentle, but it was filled with helplessness and grief. The butcher's knife descended from above his head and he raised his hand as well. The butcher's knife, which was identical to the culinary god's, slashed upwards. The two butcher's knives collided in the air, and the source box array protecting Dragon Mountain trembled as a terrifying pressure swept out. "Thank you for your support, brothers." "Thank you." Chapter 2260. Mr. Tang and Lu Yin hurriedly stood in front of the students. The White Dragon tribe also sent emissaries to block the shockwaves. However, how could these emissaries block the shockwaves of a half-progenitor? Fortunately, the middle-aged man waved his hand, and an invisible force blocked the shockwaves, preventing Dragon Mountain from being hit. The culinary god's eyes turned red. "Bastard, you're courting death." He raised his head and was about to use his inner world when the middle-aged man bowed. "Ancestor, please descend." Just as he finished speaking, an eyeball appeared on Dragon Mountain and stared at the culinary god and everyone else. At the same time, an indescribable force stopped the culinary god from attacking. Everyone felt an irresistible heavenly might. This was the power of a progenitor. Lu Yin looked at the eyeball above his head and his heart sank. Was the dragon ancestor here? Everyone else looked up at the eyeball in a daze. This was the power of a progenitor. The culinary god's body swayed and he wanted to forcefully use his inner world, but he did not attack. If the power of a progenitor appeared, he would not have a chance to kill that bastard. He could only hate himself for not knowing that the bastard was hiding in the White Dragon tribe. The White Dragon clan, it was the White Dragon clan. He stared at Long Tian and the others. "I've thought of many possibilities, but I never expected that bastard to be hiding in your White Dragon clan." Good, very good. Long Tian felt bitter. That senior had been exposed and their relationship with Xian Academy was now completely at odds. However, they had no choice. If they did not invite that senior, they would not be able to summon the power of a progenitor, and they would not be able to stop the culinary god's pressure. If the White Dragon tribe was suppressed by the culinary god on their own Dragon Mountain, they would not have the face to be one of the four scales. Forget it, so be it. Xian Academy would soon become history anyway. At worst, they would just have to protect their bottom line. Right now, the most important thing was that the secret of the blood pool could not be exposed. This was the most important matter for the White Dragon tribe. As for the mountains and seas, it was not that easy to inherit their legacy. One person was enough, and the rest could even be tried by everyone in the starry sky of the trees. If one was not qualified, then one was not qualified. Adding more spots would only increase the chances of success. "Master, you're still so impulsive. But it's been so many years." The middle-aged man walked out of the void and stood in front of Long Tian and the others. He faced with the culinary god, the eyeball above his head. The progenitor's is, but it did not represent the progenitor himself. The progenitor himself. Of the progenitor's progenitor. Mr. Tang and the others also saw it and breathed a sigh of relief. The culinary god of the progenitor. Of the progenitor of the ofs of the gods. The progenitor. The culinary god stared at the middle-aged man, no longer looking as calm as before. Instead, he looked like a madman who had been blinded by hatred. "Bastard, I hate that I made the wrong choice to take you as my disciple. I hate that I didn't realize that you were the one who killed little Ping. I hate that you escaped. I hate that I didn't find you, bastard." The middle-aged man shook his head and sighed. He looked at the culinary god with pity. "Master, how many times do I have to tell you before you believe me? Junior sister did it willingly. She wanted to help me, and the more I loved her, the more pain I had to endure. This pain helped me improve my cultivation, and it was because of this pain that I was able to become a half-progenitor. Master, look, your disciple has become a half-progenitor." The culinary god was enraged and he clenched his fists. His entire body trembled with rage. "Bastard, I'll kill you one day." The middle-aged man laughed. "Master, how many years have you been in the ancestral gazing pavilion? Unfortunately, you were unable to do so. Otherwise, with your strength, you would have broken through to progenitor long ago. Why bother? It's because I caused the humans to lose a progenitor." And Lu Yin did not understand their conversation. "What's going on?" Mr. Wei whispered. "It looks like that person was Sir Yu. He's senior culinary god's disciple, and their matter is related to an old case. Senior culinary god's innate talent is extremely high, and he became a half-progenitor at his peak. He's on par with the Myriad Daoist clan's ancestor Myriad Daoist and the White Dragon clan's elder Ni Huang. He's the most likely powerhouse to break through to progenitor in the universe. However, due to an accident, senior culinary god has not dared to break through to this day. It was his disciple Sir Yu who killed senior's other disciple, a female disciple. His methods were extremely cruel, so it's not convenient for me to say too much. Senior culinary god has engraved this matter in his heart. He has been dominated by hatred for countless years, and the reason why he went to the ancestral gazing pavilion was to forget his hatred. After countless years, no one knows if Senior has truly forgotten his hatred. The more Senior forgets his hatred, the easier it is for him to become a progenitor. Lu Yin understood. That's why the outside world is so afraid of Senior. The longer others drag it out, the harder it is for them to become a progenitor. It's the opposite for Senior. The longer you drag it out, the more likely it is for you to forget your hatred and break through to progenitor. Mr. Wei nodded. But now it looks like this hatred is far from being forgotten. Senior hated Sir Yu so much just by sensing Sir Yu's existence. He even took action at Dragon Mountain and forced the White Dragon clan to use their progenitor's power. This knot in Senior's heart will be difficult to untie. As he spoke, Lu Yin also listened to the conversation between the culinary god and the others. Master, everything I did was taught by you. Are you the same person as you are now? You shouldn't blame me. Look at how cruel and terrifying your inner world is. Who would dare to mention it? Compared to you, this disciple is simply too benevolent, Sir Yu said helplessly with admiration. The culinary god stared at Sir Yu. My inner world will only allow you to experience it. Aside from you, it will not attack anyone else. I will let you fully experience it. Sir Yu smiled. This disciple looks forward to it. He then looked past the culinary god at Lu Yin and the others. This is Dragon Mountain. Master doesn't want the dragon ancestor to descend, right? This disciple will take his leave first. Otherwise, Master might not be in the mood to chat with the White Dragon clan. Right, let me remind you Master's current appearance. He smiled and pointed behind him. It's easy to scare children. He then retreated and disappeared. At the same time, the dragon ancestor's eyeball also disappeared. The disappearance of the progenitor's power made the others heave a sigh of relief. It was only then that they realized that their backs were drenched in sweat. Wait, bastard, get out here! The culinary god shouted angrily and wanted to attack again. Mr. Tang hurried forward to stop him. Senior, this is Dragon Mountain. It will be difficult to deal with a progenitor's power. The culinary god panted heavily and stared in the direction that Sir Yu had left. His eyes were so red that they were about to bleed. This was the first time Mr. Tang had seen the culinary god like this. That old case was too far away and even he did not understand it. If not for Mr. Wei's familiarity with history, no one would have told them about it. The culinary god took a few deep breaths and forced himself to calm down. Across from him, the White Dragon clan looked at each other. Long Tian stepped forward. Senior culinary god, my apologies. The culinary god looked up at Long Tian. I never thought that the White Dragon clan would take in that bastard. Long Tian fell silent. This was something that had happened a long time ago. He knew of Sir Yu, who was a half-ancestor, but he did not know much about him. Not many in the White Dragon clan knew of his existence, but because of the culinary god, Sir Yu had not dared to appear and had become the hidden guardian of Dragon Mountain. If not for the blood pool, Sir Yu would not have appeared. To think that I was so polite to the White Dragon clan. The scales are all the same, so it's no wonder that you would join forces with the frigid Immortal sect to banish the Lu family. Even that bastard was willing to take him in. Do you have any bottom line? The culinary god said coldly. Long Tian was helpless. That was not my decision. The culinary god looked up at the top realm, or more accurately at the sovereign realm. Indeed, taking in that bastard was not something that a child like Long Tian could decide, but rather the high and mighty dragon ancestor. Only the dragon ancestor could decide whether to take in Sir Yu, and only the dragon ancestor had the ability to take in Sir Yu at the risk of exposing himself and becoming his mortal enemy. There were some things that could only be thought of, and the culinary god did not say them out loud. Unless Sir Yu became a half-ancestor, even if progenitors respected him, it would only be on the surface. Even Wan Zi might not be able to become a half-ancestor, let alone him. They respected all half-ancestors, but there was still a fundamental difference. Long Tian sighed. He understood why his clan had taken in Sir Yu, but the clan's foundation was too shallow, and they could not compare to the frigid Immortal sect, Shenwu Heaven, or the Wang family. During the Daoist sect's era they had 9 mountains and 8 seas, so what did the White Dragon clan have? If not for their ancestor coincidentally reaching the progenitor realm under the guidance of a senior, the White Dragon clan would not even have the qualifications to join forces with them. The White Dragon clan had been willing to take in Suryu, who had not even been a half-ancestor, because they knew that he would definitely become a half-ancestor and become the guardian of Dragon Mountain. Unfortunately, this powerhouse could not be exposed. Senior, it's not appropriate for this junior to comment on the matter between you and Senior you, but regarding the blood pool, I hope that Senior will not listen to others. There is absolutely no problem with the blood pool, Long Tian said respectfully. The culinary god no longer had a good impression of the White Dragon clan, and his impression of them was even worse than that of the other three clans. You know very well whether there is a problem or not. The White Dragon clan's training will end here. We still have to go to the frigid Immortal sect, so goodbye. Long Tian hurriedly blocked the culinary god. Senior, you must clarify this matter today. The culinary god's gaze turned cold. You still want to attack my Xian Academy? Senior, you must have forgotten why Xian Academy is training at the four-way scales, Long Tian said directly, no longer being respectful. The culinary god had indeed forgotten, as Suryu's appearance had thrown his thoughts into disarray. The reason why Xian Academy was training was because of the conditions that the four-way scales had given them. They had reached an agreement with the four-way scales to rope in the students and distribute the resources of the mountains and seas. It was also an opportunity for Xian Academy to be smoothly taken over by the four-way scales. Of course, the culinary god did not know about the allocation of the quotas. If everything went smoothly and the students joined the four-way scales, Xian Academy would naturally be taken over. However, if Xian Academy was unwilling to train, the four-way scales might not be so gentle. At the very least, an progenitor would appear. Thank you for your support, brothers. Thank you. Chapter 2261. Actually, Xian Academy was not afraid of the four cardinal scales using force. The culinary god had already said that at most he would risk his life to pass the tribulation. This was also the reason why he had been able to protect Xian Academy for so many years. However, if he used force, the four cardinal scales would know that the mountain and sea had a master. This was what Xian Academy did not want to expose. For a moment, the culinary god stopped. Long Tian thought that the culinary god was worried about Xian Academy, worried that he would fail his tribulation and die, so he said again, Senior, if it was before, the four cardinal scales would be worried that you would succeed, but now there is no need to worry. Your performance just now was very reassuring. Although it is a pity that the human race has lost an ancestor, many things have become easier for us. The culinary god raised his eyebrows. Junior, the ancestor's origin tribulation does not only look at one's state of mind. This old man's countless years of accumulation is not something you can see through. Therefore, Junior does not want to fall out with Senior. The matter of the blood pool must be explained clearly. Senior and the others, please stay in Dragon Mountain for a few more days. My white dragon race will definitely produce evidence that the blood pool is normal, Long Tian said. How could they produce evidence if the blood pool was normal? Normally, the other party would produce evidence to prove that the blood pool was abnormal. However, how could the white dragon race dare to let this matter spread? Even if the blood pool was normal, it would be disadvantageous to the white dragon race. The blood pool was the white dragon race's greatest method of recruiting foreign cultivators. Once it was destroyed with the white dragon race's weak foundation, they would only be pulled apart by the other three families. This was not something the white dragon race could accept. Moreover, there was a problem with the blood pool itself. He had to report to the ancestor and think of a way to hide this matter. The troublesome thing was that there were still people from the Bai, Xia, Wang, Nong, Lu and other families present. This was what the white dragon race needed to deal with. They needed time. No matter what, the white dragon race would not let the people of Xian Academy leave. The culinary god could only agree to stay for now. Sir, the white dragon race won't do anything to us, right? Nong Xinyang was worried. Lu Yin comforted her. Don't worry, they won't dare. The white dragon tribe would not be so crazy as to attack them, but Lu Yin was curious as to how they would resolve this matter. After all, he was the root of the problem. Coincidentally, Long Tian looked at him with a strong killing intent and helplessness. Given the status of the four-way scales, it was rare for them to be helpless against a third tribulation origin cultivator. The huge courtyard stretched across the mountains and rivers. This was a place provided by the White Dragon clan for the people of the academy to rest. Everyone had their own courtyard. The food and drinks were the best, and even cultivation resources were provided. Lu Yin had originally wanted to chat with the culinary god, but the culinary god had shut his doors and was clearly not in the mood. Lu Yin could only return to his residence and take out Mount Supreme before releasing Long Shi. Lu Yin was quite familiar with Dragon Mountain, not because he had been there once but because of Long Ku's memories. He had been in Long Ku's body for a long time and his memories were mixed. A considerable portion of them were related to Long Shan. Of course, it was also because he deliberately searched for the location of Long Ku's private stash of resources that he found Long Shan's memories. He knew that he wouldn't be monitored here. The White Dragon race wasn't the Wang clan and didn't have the mountains and seas hanging high up in the sky. Even if he wanted to invite the power of the progenitor realm, he would need a half-progenitor to do it. Who would be monitoring him? Lu Yin released Long Shi without worry. Long Shi was confused. Where are we? She looked outside and her expression changed. Long Shan. Lu Yin nodded. Since we're here, I think I should let you out to take a look. Long Shi's expression was complicated. She had been away from Dragon Mountain for decades and she was already used to it. Now that she had suddenly returned, she was not used to it. But that's fine. I can't wander around. My current identity is a teacher from Xian Academy called Hao Yu. Xian Academy is currently. Lu Yin told her everything that had happened. Long Shi looked at him. Did you attack the White Dragon clan again? Lu Yin pursed his lips. It's a small matter, not a big deal. Long Shi retracted her gaze. Is there really a problem with the blood pool? Lu Yin nodded. You don't know. Long Shi shook her head. No. Long Shi looked outside and seemed to be lost in her memories. The problem with the blood pool naturally came from Long Ku's memories, but too few people in the White Dragon clan knew about it. Even Long Shi did not know. Lu Yin asked, Do you miss Long Tian? Long Shi replied, The White Dragon clan has a long lifespan. A few decades are only a few years for us. She then looked at Lu Yin strangely. You want to capture him? Lu Yin replied, No, why would you think that? Long Shi stared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin felt guilty. I don't like to capture people. I have no choice. Like when Shurgui and the others, Xia Taili and Yuqin? Long Shi asked. Lu Yin coughed. Don't worry, this is Dragon Mountain. How could I capture Long Tian? Something will happen. Dragon Mountain has a half-ancestor and your ancestor's power protecting it. Long Shi said, Based on my understanding of you, there's nothing you don't dare to do, but you can do it flawlessly. Lu Yin did not want to talk about this, but he thought of Long Ku. He looked at Long Shi's melancholy face and felt a little upset. Do you miss your father? Long Shi's eyes dimmed. It doesn't matter. He never thought about us. If you want, I can let you meet him. Lu Yin felt guilty. Long Shi was stunned and blinked at Lu Yin. You really did capture him. Lu Yin was speechless. Not here. It was many days ago. It was an accident. Is my father at Mount Supreme too? Long Shi looked at the nearby Mount Supreme and asked. Lu Yin nodded. If you want, I can let you meet him. Of course, you can always meet him, but you can't let him out. Long Shi shook her head. Forget it, I don't want to meet him for now. Lu Yin was helpless. Then do you want to leave Mount Supreme? He had asked this question more than 3 times, and Long Shi's answer was the same every time. I've seen enough. I can go back now. Long Shi said after a while. Lu Yin was a little embarrassed and hesitant. Long Shi looked at him. Just say it. Lu Yin coughed again. Well, I have a favor to ask. I don't know if you're willing to help. I know you wouldn't ask me to come out and reminisce about the past for no reason. What favor? Long Shi was annoyed. Lu Yin explained, I really want you to see Dragon Mountain. After all, you live here. It would be unreasonable if I don't let you out. Long Shi was helpless. Tell me. What favor? Lu Yin took a deep breath. Long Ku has a secret stash of resources in Dragon Mountain, but it needs his bloodline to open. Long Shi was speechless. Didn't you capture my father? Can't you just use his blood? Lu Yin laughed dryly. It's best if you don't let him know. He didn't know if he would be able to use Long Ku in the future, so he naturally didn't want Long Ku to know that his resources had been taken away by Lu Yin. Long Shi was here anyway and her bloodline could still open that place. It was always good to have a backup plan. Long Shi frowned and looked at Lu Yin for a while. Take me there. Thank you. Lu Yin relaxed. He had been afraid that Long Shi wouldn't agree, so he could only use Long Ku's blood to open it. Dragon Mountain had Suryu, and Lu Ying knew that it would be difficult to reach Long Ku's stash on his own. It was at Long Ku's residence. Long Ku was the leader of the White Dragon tribe, so his residence was definitely the most heavily guarded place in the White Dragon tribe. Fortunately, Lu Ying had the Mist Ancestor. The Fog Ancestor came out and was rather impatient. However, when he saw Long Shi, he originally wanted to get angry, but he forcibly suppressed it. Yo, which family's girl is so beautiful? Not bad, kid. One after the other. Lu Ying was speechless. Senior, what do you mean one after the other? Don't spout nonsense. Long Shi bowed to the Mist Ancestor. Before Lu Ying had invited her out, he had told her, Junior Long Shi of the White Dragon tribe greets Senior Mist Ancestor. The Mist Ancestor nodded and helped Long Shi up to take a closer look. Not bad, not bad. White Dragon tribe. Is Long Air your ancestor? Lu Ying was confused. Long Air? Long Shi was confused as well. Long Air? The Mist Ancestor replied, Yes, Long Yuan. Long Yuan is this junior's ancestor, Long Shi said respectfully. The Mist Ancestor sneered, These fellows don't even dare to say their nicknames. Long Yuan is Long Air and he's quite silly. However, this fellow was born with different pupils and has some talent. After some guidance, he became an ancestor. Not bad, not bad. I wonder if he still recognizes me now. Ancestor will never forget Senior's kindness, Long Shi said respectfully. The Mist Ancestor was satisfied. You're much more polite than this kid. This kid only knows how to use me and he's never been so respectful. Lu Ying hurriedly flattered the Mist Ancestor, and only then did he stop the Mist Ancestor from praising himself. When she found out that this was Long Shan and that Long Shi had helped Lu Ying steal her father's hidden resources, the Mist Ancestor looked at Lu Ying as if he was looking at a saint of love. Not bad, kid. You stole someone's daughter and even made her help you steal my resources. How despicable. Lu Yin's lips twitched, but before he could speak, the Mist Ancestor suddenly recalled something. One of the people you asked me to capture was from the White Dragon tribe. Right, he looks quite similar to this girl. Could he be her father? Long Shi looked at Lu Ying in amusement. Lu Yin's voice was hoarse. There's a reason. The Mist Ancestor looked at him with disdain. You stole someone's daughter, captured her father, and now you're making her help you steal her father's resources. Kid, you're too ruthless. Lu Ying felt that he had gone overboard after hearing her words. Sigh, if Xiaxia had been like you back then, he wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. That guy is a blockhead, and there's also Kujia. A bunch of blockheads, the Mist Ancestor lamented before using Wei to bring the two of them to Long Ku's residence. The Mist Ancestor's words confirmed Lu Yin's suspicions that she might have liked progenitor Chen. As for Kujia, she couldn't have thought that he didn't dare to confess because he liked her, right? That was just nonsense, but the truth was something that only their generation knew. Given Kujia's temper, he probably wouldn't have admitted it even if he was beaten to death back then. He was too low-key and introverted. Longshan had countless peaks, rivers, oceans, and even a pond civilization. Long Ku lived not too far away from the Blood Pond, and it was in the direction of Suryu. As he watched Wei lead them in that direction, Lu Ying panicked a little. After all, there was a half-step ancestor who could use progenitor's power. Chapter 2262. Soon Wei brought them to the mountain where Long Ku lived. It was a solemn hall that fully displayed the White Dragon clan's prestige. Lu Ying liked environments that returned to their natural state. He didn't like buildings like this, but he couldn't deny that they represented a certain kind of power. There was no one in the hall and it was very cold. Lu Ying knew that this hall should be very lively with guards and maids everywhere. However, with Long Ku's disappearance, no one knew where these people had gone. I don't like it here, Long Shi said slowly as she stood in the hall. If the Mist Ancestor hadn't confirmed that there was no problem, Lu Ying wouldn't have dared to let her speak so loudly. This was one of the 4 scales, the residence of the White Dragon clan's leader. It's too cold here, Long Shi said softly. Lu Ying replied, there should have been a lot of people here, but your father went missing. Long Shi shook her head and looked at Lu Ying, her eyes bright and filled with an indescribable emotion. It has nothing to do with the number of people here. The people here are just too cold. She looked around. Our bloodline has replaced the main bloodline. Before this, we didn't live here, but after the main bloodline disappeared, we moved here. Father built this hall and brought Long Tian and me here. At that time he told me that everything had changed and that I could go anywhere in Dragon Mountain without needing Fourth Sister to bring me around. But I like it more when Fourth Sister brings us around. I like it when he brings me around. Lu Yin sighed. Long Tian must like your father's words. Long Shi replied, what he thinks has nothing to do with me. I just know that I can't stay here for even a day. So you often live in the Central Realm? Lu Yin asked. Long Shi nodded. Where is the place you're looking for? I'm not familiar with this place. Lu Yin followed Long Ku's memories to the 7th pillar at the back of the hall. This place wasn't hidden, but it didn't need to be hidden either. Long Ku had thought that it would be better to hide the resources here rather than spend time looking for a hidden place. This was the place where the White Dragon clan's main bloodline was represented. Long Ku wouldn't give up on this place and no one else could enter as they pleased. Without his bloodline, no one else, including the guards who stood here all year round, would be able to find the resources. Your father really knows how to hide things, Lu Yin said as he pointed at the bottom of the pillar. Long Shi was not surprised. That's his style. After saying that, he raised his hand and a drop of blood dripped onto the stone pillar. As he watched the stone pillar rise and the void ripple, Lu Yin's eyes flashed. This was a greater world. In the 5th mainland, the great worlds were mainly places where some races or forces could survive in the Neoverse. However, the Starry Sky Tree was the best place to hide resources. The Starry Sky Tree was dangerous, but it was also not. It was not like the Neoverse Glory Plane, which could easily be destroyed if one did not live in a great world. The Hall of Honor did not have the ability to control the entire 5th mainland, including the Glory Plane. However, the Starry Sky Tree was different. Regardless of whether it was in the past or now, either the Lu clan, the Frigid Immortal sect, the Lu clan, or the 4 cardinal scales, the School of Agriculture, the Lu clan, and the other powerful forces were in charge of the Starry Sky. Therefore, the Starry Sky was generally considered stable and the Great World was not very useful. As for the transportation of troops, there was no need for that at all. The back of the battlefield had its own plans for mobilizing troops over the years. Lu Yin entered the Great Realm where the resources were hidden. The space was very small and Lu Yin directly plundered everything. Long Ku did not hide many resources, and there were only a little more than 2 billion star essence. Including the other items, it was not even worth 3 points for Lu Yin. Although it was not a lot, it was still enough for him to personally take it. It was better than nothing. After all, Long Ku had not been the clan leader for long. The two quickly left the hall, and Long Shi asked the Fog Ancestor to take her to the place where she had once lived. It was not the Crouching Dragon Lake that Lu Yin had once lived in. The Crouching Dragon Lake was a place that only the direct descendants of the White Dragon clan were qualified to live in. Back then, Lu Yin had changed his name to Long Qi, and after arriving at Dragon Mountain, he had been arranged to live in the Crouching Dragon Lake. At the time, Patriarch Wuxia had said that he would be accepted as a disciple, and the White Dragon clan had sought out Celestial Master Qiuling and wanted him to become her disciple. At that time, Long Qi's name had resounded throughout the Starry Sky Tree. At that time, Long Qi had been qualified to live in the Crouching Dragon Lake. Before him, Long Shi had lived there, and before that, Long Tian had lived there. Long Shi wanted to go to the place where her bloodline had not yet become the main bloodline's residence, and she longed to return there. It was also a tall mountain, but it was much shorter than the one Long Ku had lived in. However, it was still not far from the blood pool. The area around the blood pool, including Long Ku's mountain and the ancestral grounds, was the center of Dragon Mountain. The higher one's status, the closer they were to the center. Long Ku's bloodline had not been able to replace the main bloodline because of luck. They were the strongest of all the bloodlines, and the Longquan bloodline was second only to them. The bloodline had replaced the main bloodline, and the former mountain had been abandoned. No one would come back to take a look, they would only look forward. Long Ku had even hidden the resources in the hall, a testament to his determination. Long Shi walked in front of the abandoned mountain and saw familiar courtyards, familiar flowers and trees. There were also many strange but cute animals. He looked to the right and saw a huge cat-like creature pouncing over. It did not attack but instead approached Long Shi and meowed happily. Long Shi's eyes lit up when she saw it and she hugged it. "Nini, is that you, Nini?" The big cat meowed happily and wagged its tail. Lu Yin was surprised to see Long Shi laughing so happily as she hugged the cat. He had never seen her laugh so happily before. Suddenly the same scene appeared in his mind. A young girl hugging a pet and laughing happily. That girl's face was beautiful and he thought it was Long Shi, but it wasn't. The girl had the same beautiful face as Long Shi, but her temperament was completely different. She was more elegant, less cold, more calm and less naive. At the same time she was more holy and less worldly. Perhaps it was because of the pet she was holding. It was a 7-colored deer. A 7-colored deer, Lu Yin suddenly said. Long Shi's expression changed and she stiffened while hugging the big cat. She turned to look at Lu Yin in shock. You remember? Lu Yin was stunned and confused. What? Long Shi stared at him and saw confusion in his eyes instead of the hatred and complexity she had expected. You know about the 7-colored deer? Lu Yin nodded and recalled the scene that had appeared in his mind. It's by Xian'er's pet, right? Long Shi sighed and patted the big cat's head. She still had a smile on her face, but it was no longer as pure as before. Bai Xian'er was the idol of many people, but she was also the target of many people's hatred. In Long Shi's heart she belonged to the latter category. If possible, I'll definitely kill her. The big cat blinked and meowed softly as if it had understood Lu Yin's feelings. Feeling Long Shi's mood, it stopped wagging its tail and kept rubbing Long Shi's face with its head. Long Shi smiled again. It's fine, Nini. Go play. The big cat's ears drooped down, and it licked Long Shi's hand before leaving, looking back 3 times with every step. Is this your pet? Lu Yin asked. Long Shi's expression dimmed. You've seen it before. Lu Yin was surprised. Zhou Xian had seen it before and it had lived for a long time. It didn't have any cultivation and was just an ordinary animal. Long Shi didn't say much, but she was still depressed. Lu Yin sensed it, but for some reason he thought that it was because she had seen the place where she used to live. After walking for a while he thought that the mountain was completely deserted, but he soon found someone familiar. Long Shi's maid, Xianxia. Long Shi hadn't expected Xianxia to be here. She had a good relationship with the girl and was about to go find her, but Lu Yin stopped her and gestured for her to keep quiet. Within a courtyard, Xianxia didn't sense their arrival and was conversing with someone using a Cloud Connect stone. That's all. The White Dragon tribe ordered us not to spread this news. Not bad, you're finally useful in the White Dragon tribe. A voice came from the stone. Continue to keep an eye on her. The White Dragon tribe won't let news of the blood pool spread. Let's see what price they'll pay to silence those from Xian Academy. Understood, Xianxia replied. By the way, is there any news about my father? You're in the White Dragon tribe. If there's news about Elder Ni Huang, then there's naturally news about your father. Or do you think that your father can return before Elder Ni Huang? Xiaoqian's face paled. Sorry, I spoke too much. Originally, when Long Shi went missing, some people proposed to transfer you back. You no longer have any value in the White Dragon race, but many things have happened and it has been delayed until now. If we had transferred you back then, you would have either followed your father to the battlefield on the other side, or you would have only been an ordinary disciple. But now the opportunity has come. Find a chance to get close to that Mr. Hao Yu from Xian Academy. It would be best if you could seduce him. You're also quite beautiful and our people in the White Dragon race will help you. Xiaoqian hesitated. What, you don't want to do it? No, I'm just thinking about what to do. Do your best. That Hao Yu isn't that easy to seduce. If the White Dragon tribe finds out, just say that you've had enough of that place and want to borrow his power to leave. Xiaoqian gritted her teeth. Yes, I'll do my best. Outside the courtyard, Long Shi's expression was gloomy. She had always been cold and arrogant, and she would only reveal some of her true feelings towards Xiaoqian. She had long since treated Xiaoqian as a younger sister, and even if she scolded her sometimes, it would not be too severe. She had never thought that this person had been a spy sent by an outsider from the start. Lu Yin hadn't expected such a thing to happen, but he wasn't surprised. It was very common for powers to plant spies in each other's territories, and if they dared to plant spies in the White Dragon tribe and had people within the White Dragon tribe to provide support, then it had to be one of the 4 scales. He just didn't know which one. How did she become your maid back then? Lu Yin asked. Long Shi answered in a low voice. The last maid was allowed to leave Dragon Mountain to marry someone else. I accidentally saw her being bullied, but her eyes were resolute, so I took her in. Lu Yin nodded. It's an old story. He wanted to say something else, but Long Shi rushed into the courtyard and appeared in front of Xiaoqian. Chapter 2263. Lu Yin pursed his lips. The more aloof a person was, the more violent their outbursts would be when they couldn't control their emotions. Xiao Qian stared blankly at Long Shi, who had suddenly appeared. "Pure princess?" Long Shi stared at her with a solemn expression. "Who sent you?" Xiao Qian panicked and dropped the cloud pass stone in her hand. She instinctively jumped in fright and took a few steps back. "Who sent you?" Long Shi barked. Xiao Qian trembled and stared at Long Shi in fear. She was usually aloof like Long Shi, but at this moment, it was as if her disguise had been torn apart. Fear spread like a tide. Princess, I don't know what you're talking about." Long Shi looked at her in disappointment. "I heard everything you said. Tell me everything and I won't let you die." The word die terrified Xiao Qian. She had been in the White Dragon tribe for so many years and had never experienced death. She was even more terrified now. "Princess, I didn't hurt you or the White Dragon tribe." "Speak." Long Shi barked, her voice shaking the entire room. Xiao Qian's legs went soft and she collapsed to the ground. Beads of sweat rolled down her forehead and her eyes went blank. It's the frigid Immortal sect." Long Shi sighed and looked at the paralyzed Xiao Qian, not knowing what to say. At this moment, Lu Yin walked over. "What did the frigid Immortal sect send you to do in the White Dragon tribe?" Xiao Qian looked at Lu Yin in shock. "Long Qi? No, Lu Xiaoxian?" Lu Yin had returned to his original appearance when he released Long Shi. He smiled and bent down to stare at Xiao Qian. "Since you know who I am, you should know that I won't go easy on you. Answer my questions and I might let you live. Otherwise..." Xiao Qian hurriedly hugged Long Shi's leg and begged, "Princess, please spare me. I didn't do anything. Even though the frigid Immortal sect sent me to Dragon Mountain, I really didn't do anything. I didn't hurt you or the White Dragon tribe." "Then what were you doing just now?" "The White Dragon tribe tried their best to cover up the matter of the blood pool, but you spread the news back to the frigid Immortal sect." Xiao Qian's face was deathly pale. She had no way to argue. "By the way, I remember something. Back then I used the name Long Qi and Long Shi to visit the ancestral Mang in the mortal world. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be easy for others to find out about our itinerary. However, the cold Immortal sect managed to find us. They knew the time of our departure and accurately calculated our location." Lu Yin suddenly asked. Xiao Qian hurriedly denied it. "No, it wasn't me. I didn't say anything. Also, after I arrived at Dragon Mountain, I went to the hidden Dragon Lake, but I was challenged by the other White Dragon branch disciples." "Did you tell them?" Lu Yin asked again. Xiao Qian panicked. "No, I really didn't tell them that. With the strength of those subsidiary sect's disciples, they wouldn't be able to affect you. I really didn't say anything this time. So you were the one who told me about the itinerary to pay respects to the ancestral Mang." Lu Yin sneered. Xiao Qian trembled, her face pale. Long Shi looked at Xiao Qian and asked, "How many times have you betrayed me?" Xiao Qian was terrified and didn't dare to say anything. "If you don't want to talk about it, does that mean you've done a lot? If that's the case, then there's no reason for you to continue living." Xiao Qian hurriedly replied, "No, I didn't do much. It was just that Junior Ancestor Bai wanted to pursue the princess, so I told them about her itinerary." "What else?" Lu Yin barked. This woman was not afraid of death, so he just needed to scare her a little. Xiao Qian was frightened by Lu Yin and she blurted out, "And those subsidiary sect's disciples?" I told them about the itinerary of the White Dragon branch disciples." Lu Yin understood. No wonder all the White Dragon branch disciples who wanted to marry Long Shi were killed. "I was wondering how the frigid Immortal sect had the ability to search the entire central realm, as they couldn't have sealed off every single location. So you were the one who gave them the locations." Xiao Qian lowered her head and her heart continued to sink. The fear of death enveloped her and she didn't dare to hide anything. Long Shi closed her eyes. She had also wondered how the frigid Immortal sect had been able to find all the subsidiary sect's disciples. There had been at least 100 of them and they had come from all directions. The frigid Immortal sect couldn't possibly have so many people to seal off every single direction, but they had still managed to do it. So this was the reason. She had harmed them. "Princess, I've never hurt you. Please spare my life." "Spare me," Xiao Qian begged. Long Shi's eyes were filled with grief, and there was an intense killing intent in the depths of her eyes. Lu Yin didn't doubt that she would kill Xiao Qian on the spot. He pressed a hand on her shoulder and she looked at him in confusion. Lu Yin walked past her and squatted down, looking at Xiao Qian at eye level. "Let me ask you, who is your father?" Xiao Qian's body trembled and her eyes flickered. This question was even more terrifying than Long Shi's, and she didn't dare to answer. She didn't even dare to look at Lu Yin. Lu Yin had only asked out of curiosity. After all, he had heard from the person across from the Cloud Vision Stone that Xiao Qian's father had gone to the Fifth Mainland to join the expedition, just like Elder Ni Huang. However, Xiao Qian's behavior was too abnormal, especially when she faced him. She had a strange fear, or rather an instinctive fear that was even more terrifying than when she faced Long Shi. Even though he had caused a ruckus at Dragon Mountain under the alias of Long Qi and caused the White Dragon clan to lose face, it wasn't enough to make Xiao Qian so terrified. His words had been threatening, but Xiao Qian's reaction didn't seem to be as simple as that. "I'm asking you, who is your father?" Lu Yin asked again. Xiao Qian's voice trembled as she replied, Elder Green Apricot." Lu Yin was stunned. Elder Green Apricot? Even Long Shi was curious. "You're the daughter of Elder Green Apricot from the Cold Immortal sect?" Xiao Qian nodded. "You seem to be very afraid of admitting it," Lu Yin commented. Xiao Qian panicked. "Father has helped Bai Xiaohong force the princess many times. Many of the assassinations against the White Dragon clan's branch disciples were done by him. He even contacted the Boundless Assassins." She paused and looked at Lu Yin. "Assassinate Long Qi, so I don't dare to say it." Lu Yin stood up and looked at the limp Xiao Qian on the ground. He hadn't expected her to be Elder Green Apricot's daughter, and he hadn't expected someone as old as Elder Green Apricot to have a daughter. Long Shi hadn't expected this either. "No wonder you betrayed the White Dragon clan so easily. So you told your father. To be honest, this isn't betrayal but rather theft." Xiao Qian kept begging Long Shi to let her go. Long Shi was about to attack, but Lu Yin suddenly said, "Wait." Xiao Qian looked at Lu Yin hopefully. Long Shi didn't understand. "You want to save her?" Lu Yin replied, "Keeping her alive is more useful than killing her. We can use her to steal information from the Cold Immortal sect and even use them." "Then what about what she did in the past?" Long Shi's tone turned cold. "Those branch disciples died because of her. Who's going to avenge them?" "Princess, I can help you mislead the Cold Immortal sect. I can help you steal information from the Cold Immortal sect, but please don't kill me." "Please, Princess," Xiao Qian begged. Lu Yin replied, "I won't stop you from killing her, but think about the White Dragon clan's situation. Using her is more valuable than killing her." Long Shi lowered her head and looked at Xiao Qian, her eyes filled with anger, killing intent and disappointment. "I thought that you were like me, but I was wrong." She then turned around and walked out of the courtyard. Xiao Qian heaved a sigh of relief, but her eyes were filled with bitterness. After so many years she had feelings for Long Shi as well, but their positions were different. Lu Yin's voice rang out, "Being alive isn't necessarily better than being dead. If I can keep you alive, then I'm confident that I can control you." He then raised a hand and sent the Grim Reaper's seal into Xiao Qian's body. Xiao Qian wasn't even an enlighter, so the Grim Reaper's seal didn't have much control over her. Some people would rather die than have their astral origin cyclone destroyed, as losing one's cultivation was far more painful than dying. However, to Xiao Qian, death was the most terrifying thing. "I can kill you with a single thought. If you don't believe me, you can ask the Cold Immortal sect for help. Of course, there's only one chance. If you try and fail, you'll die without a complete corpse." Xiao Qian's body trembled. "I wouldn't dare try. Thank you, Long Shi. Thank you, son-in-law." Lu Yin raised a brow. He hadn't heard the words son-in-law in a long time. "Aside from the killing technique planted in your body, there's someone else I want you to meet. Part of the reason why you're still alive is because of him." He then took out Mount Supreme and released Elder Green Apricot. When Elder Green Apricot came out, he looked at Lu Yin in confusion, not knowing what to do. Lu Yin replied, "Don't say that I'm heartless. I'll protect your daughter for you, but whether or not she can atone for her crimes will depend on her own luck." Elder Green Apricot was still confused. "Daughter?" Xiao Qian, who was paralyzed on the ground, stared at Elder Green Apricot in a daze. Why was he here? An indescribable feeling of having seen a ghost grew in Xiao Qian's mind. She would never have dreamed that Elder Green Apricot would be carried around by Lu Yin. Who would carry someone around with them? Lu Yin pointed at Zhou Xian. You don't even recognize your own daughter? Elder Green Apricot looked at Zhou Xian and frowned. She looks familiar. Suddenly, he recalled something. Aren't you Princess Longxi's maid? Lu Yin's expression changed when he heard this, and he suddenly stared at Zhou Qian. He reached out and grabbed her hair, pulling her up. Zhou Qian's face paled and her eyes filled with despair. She tried to struggle, but she couldn't break free. Outside the courtyard, Longxi walked in, not understanding why Lu Yin had suddenly attacked Zhou Qian. You dare trick me? Lu Yin's tone was icy. He had never thought that he would be tricked by a nobody who could control his life and death at any time. He had really thought that Zhou Qian was Elder Green Apricot's daughter, which was why he had protected her and kept her for his own use. He hadn't expected this woman to lie to him even before her death, and her lie had been almost perfect. Ever since he had stepped onto the path of cultivation, Lu Yin had used all sorts of methods to stay alive. He had hidden, disguised, lied, and used all sorts of methods, but he had still fallen into the hands of a little girl who could be crushed to death at any time. Elder Green Apricot couldn't figure out what was going on. Longxi stared at Zhou Qian. You're lying even before your death. Either everything you said before was a lie, or you can't reveal your father's identity. Tell me, who is your father? Lu Yin tightened his grip on Zhou Qian's hair. I need to know who your father is. Tell me. Chapter 2264. Zhou Qian's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. She could have fooled everyone with this lie, but Elder Green Apricot appeared and was brought along by Lu Xian. How could she have known that something like this wouldn't happen? Lu Yin's killing intent enveloped Zhou Qian, but it was far more intense than Longxi's. Zhou Qian closed her eyes, knowing that she couldn't hide it any longer. Her voice was dry and despairing as she uttered a name, Bai Zheng. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed and he subconsciously let go. Zhou Qian fell to the ground, her face ashen. Beside him, Longxi looked at him. You know Bai Zheng? You're Bai Zheng's daughter? Elder Green Apricot was astonished. Lu Yin took a deep breath, but his expression was terrifyingly calm. Bai Zheng again. He turned to Longxi, Lu Xing. Longxi's expression changed drastically, and a violent killing intent swept out. Lu Yin moved his finger and suppressed the killing intent. Lu Xing? That servant of yours? Longxi gritted his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. This wasn't anger but outright killing intent. Lu Yin looked at Zhou Qian. No wonder she'd made up Elder Green Apricot. She was actually Lu Zheng's daughter. Lu Zheng had been his servant, but he'd betrayed the Lu family and joined the frigid Immortal sect, changing his name to Bai Zheng. He was one of the people the Lu family wanted to kill the most. This time, Lu Yin believed that Zhou Qian wasn't lying. There was no point in lying anymore. The fact that she was Lu Zheng's daughter was enough to consign her to eternal damnation. What could be more important than hiding that she was Lu Zheng's daughter? That was impossible. At the same time, Longxi also understood why Zhou Qian had been placed by his side. Lu Zheng sent you, right? Zhou Qian nodded. She'd already said everything she needed to, and there was nothing left to hide. Longxi clenched his fists, not out of anger towards Zhou Qian, but hatred towards Lu Zheng. That traitor had not only betrayed the Lu family, but had also placed his own daughter by his side. It was obvious that he'd done it to steal the matter between him and Lu Xian. What did Lu Zheng ask you to do? Lu Yin asked. Zhou Qian's voice was hoarse and almost inaudible. Father said that Princess Longxi is very close to Lu Xian, and that she's always by the side of the 7 heroes. There are some things that even the Lu family doesn't know, but Princess Longxi might. That's why he sent me here. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He felt that he had made a mistake. Lu Zheng had died too easily and he shouldn't have let him die so easily. As far as I know, Bai Zheng went to the battlefield on the other side after joining the Cold Celestial sect. Where did his daughter come from? Elder Qingxing asked. Not long after father joined the frigid Immortal sect, he found my mother and had me soon after. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to make it out alive if he went to the battlefield on the other side, so every time he talked to me, it was through someone from the frigid Immortal sect. He was also the one who made the arrangements for me. The frigid Immortal sect wouldn't refute anything he said because it was related to Lu Xian and the 7 heroes. As for my existence, only 2 people know about it. One is my father, and the other is the current acting sect master of the frigid immortal sect, Bai Su. Elder Qingxing sighed. So that's how it is. Bai Su doesn't have much of a presence in the sect, and his cultivation is always weaker than Bai Ting's. However, he's always been the strongest in the side branches. I thought that he wouldn't be able to do much and that his fate would be to die on the battlefield on the other side. I didn't expect him to be your contact with Lu Zheng. The more inconspicuous a person is, the more likely they are to be useful, Lu Yin said coldly before looking at Zhou Xian. Now that he knew that she was Lu Zheng's daughter, should he kill her or not? The choice was in Lu Yin's hands. From the perspective of an enemy, she deserved to be killed. Even if Zhou Qian wasn't Lu Yin's enemy, Long she would still kill her. But from another perspective, as Lu Zheng's daughter, Zhou Qian's value was even greater. In the end, Lu Yin didn't kill her. Outside the courtyard, Long she looked at Lu Yin deeply. Aren't you afraid that she'll inform the frigid immortal sect? She understands the enmity between Lu Zheng and the Lu family, and she knows that she can't live. Lu Yin said, even those who seek death will think of survival before they die, and she's not seeking death. As long as there's a chance, people like her will grab it. Lu Zheng is like that, which is why he betrayed the Lu family. This woman is the same. She'll betray the frigid immortal sect and everyone she can betray in order to survive. Long she looked away. I hope you're right. There was a certain amount of danger in Lu Yin's actions, but he was sure that Zhou Qian wouldn't reveal his existence unless she had absolute confidence that she could keep herself alive. She definitely didn't want to die, so who could give her absolute confidence that she could keep herself alive? It had to be at least a half-ancestor, and she wouldn't have the ability to find one unless she returned to the frigid immortal sect. By then Lu Yin would have already been exposed, and it wouldn't take long for him to have a showdown with the four cardinal scales. When he returned to his residence, Lu Yin looked at his cosmic ring. Long she was probably in a bad mood right now. There was no end to the schemes between people both now and in the past. However, Lu Yin believed that when the Lu family had taken control of the fifth mainland, there hadn't been much of such schemes. With the Lu family suppressing them, no matter how much they schemed against each other, it wouldn't mean much unless it was out of hatred. The four cardinal scales seemed to be balancing each other on the surface. But in reality, the moment the Lu family had been exiled, a seed had been planted to replace the Lu family. It was just a matter of when it would blossom and bear fruit. When that time came, unless one side could suppress the rest with a thunderous force, the entire world would be plunged into misery and suffering. Humans had to fight amongst themselves, but they also had to deal with external pressure from the Eternals. To them, this was an unbearable pressure. They couldn't afford to lose, and their civilization couldn't be destroyed. Lu Yin looked in the direction of the mother tree. The battlefield on the back of the mother tree could be supported, and it all came from this region of space. It was this expression of peace that the Eternals wanted to break. Thus, the witch spirit god had increased his influence and exaggerated his innate gift, but he had also allowed himself to be hunted down by the four cardinal scales. Rather than saying that they were hiding among the humans to steal information, it was more accurate to say that even if they died, they still had one use, which was to create chaos. For example, when Unbounded's headquarters had been destroyed, the list of assassins and employers had been exposed, which had caused chaos in the top realm and middle realm. The Eternals' methods against the humans were like a trickle. They weren't grand, but they would eventually drain the human civilization dry. The true strength of the four cardinal scales was definitely not what it appeared to be. The reason why they had reached this point and why their experts were stretched thin was because of the expeditionary army. This was also one of the Eternals' methods, but their target was Lu Yin. Once the four cardinal scales fought amongst themselves, their resources would be depleted even more, and they wouldn't even be able to support the battlefield on the back of the mother tree. The only way to end this situation was for the Lu family to reappear. The Lu family had controlled the fifth mainland for far too long. As long as they were strong enough, they would be able to take control of the fifth mainland. If Shun took over the fifth mainland again, he would not encounter too much resistance. If any of the four sides of the balance wanted to take over the fifth mainland, the resistance they would encounter would be completely different. The Seed Garden, the Lu family Leisure Memory Academy, and the others would not give up so easily. Lu Yin looked at the mother tree. He didn't know what he was thinking, but his thoughts were all over the place. However, it seemed that he now had a reason to do what he wanted to do, a reason that was even more convincing. He collected his thoughts and continued with what he needed to do. It was time to roll the die. He tapped out and watched the die slowly spin before stopping at 6 pips. Lu Yin's eyes widened. Was he that lucky? The next moment his consciousness appeared in the dark space. Lu Yin looked around and then chose the brightest ball of light to merge with. Based on the brightness of this ball of light, it should be a cultivator with 2 origin tribulations. There were no other balls of light brighter than this one, and Lu Yin didn't want to waste any more time. As his consciousness merged with the ball of light, a familiar scent filled his nose. Lu Yin opened his eyes. Why was the sky shaking? The world spun and there was a thud as something hit the ground beside his ear. He saw a headless corpse slowly fall to the ground. Was this the battlefield on the back of the mother tree? In the blink of an eye, his consciousness returned to his body through the dark space. Lu Yin panted heavily. Dead. The person he had merged with had died in an instant. His head had been chopped off the moment he merged with his body. He hadn't expected to be so unlucky. He had just merged with his body, but he hadn't even read his memories before dying. That person had been unlucky as his death hadn't been caused by his merging. He hadn't even been able to see his enemy before being killed. The difference between them had been too great. If he had merged with his body earlier, his fate might have been different. What a pity. Lu Yin tapped out again and the die slowly spun. His luck seemed to be especially good this time as he rolled 6 pips again. This was something that rarely happened. Lu Yin's consciousness appeared in the dark space and looked around. There weren't any balls of light that were too bright, but he wasn't trying to obtain any important information. Most people in the Alliance were only at 1 or 2 origin tribulations, so these balls of light were just right for him. With that in mind, he directly merged with his body. When Lu Yin merged with someone else's body, they were usually in a stationary state, such as standing or sitting. However, this time was different. The person he had merged with was in a hurry, so he had fallen over. What's going on? Did that woman yesterday make your legs go soft? A deep voice sounded. It came from a rather handsome man. He looked young, but his gaze was extremely deep. Lu Yin felt awkward. He had actually fallen over after merging with someone who was in a hurry. It's nothing. Let's go, Lu Yin said. At the same time, memories flooded into his mind. There were 3 people around him. Aside from the handsome man, there was also an old woman. They were all emissaries, and the person Lu Yin had merged with was also an emissary at 1 origin tribulation. He was surprised as it wasn't common for 3 emissaries to walk together. However, as his memories flooded in, he understood. The person he had merged with was called Xianxia, and he was a member of the Roots. His status within the organization was quite high. The Roots were an organization in the cosmic astral tree that specialized in helping the mother tree clean up its roots. There were all sorts of people in the organization, and they spent most of their time in the mortal realm. They faced life and death situations that weren't much better than those on the other side of the battlefield. However, the people here were also respected because the mother tree was the foundation of the cosmic astral tree. Protecting the mother tree's roots was the same as protecting the cosmic astral tree. Chapter 2265. There were many masters in the root organization. This Chengli had a high status in the organization as an emissary. As for the 2 people in front of him, the handsome man was also an emissary who stayed in the root organization all year round and fought in the mortal world. The old woman was from the cold Immortal sect. Their destination was the nest of a creature that the handsome man had agreed to meet with the King of Adventure. The handsome man had a good relationship with the King of Adventure, and they often worked together to clean up the creatures that were destroying the mother tree's roots. This time, the handsome man had invited the King of Adventure to take action, but his true goal was not to clean up the creatures but to kill them. The handsome man had been bribed by the frigid Immortal sect to lure the King of Adventure to kill him. And all of this was related to Lu Yin. Back when Lu Yin had disguised himself as Draconic 7 and fled to the Central Realm after being exposed at Dragon Mountain, the King of Adventure had helped him once. The King of Adventure had not been exposed, but he had accidentally told the handsome man, who had then sold him out in exchange for benefits from the frigid Immortal sect. The frigid Immortal sect had long since known that the King of Adventure had a good relationship with the Lu family, and that he was one of the surviving members of the Lu family. Thus, they had forced him to complete the Roots missions every year, which was the same as sending him to his death. However, the King of Adventure had survived, and his contributions to the roots made it difficult for the four cardinal scales to act against him. However, the handsome man's information had given him a reason to act against the frigid Immortal sect. Although they had decided to act against the King of Adventure, the frigid Immortal sect had not acted yet because they wanted to keep an eye on him and see if they could find any of the surviving members of the Lu family. Unfortunately, so many years had passed, and the King of Adventure had not contacted any of the surviving members of the Lu family. The frigid Immortal sect did not want to waste any more time on him, so they decided to lure him out and kill him. This was a small matter for the frigid Immortal sect, as they did not need any of the sect's experts to act. They only needed to poison the King of Adventure at the right moment to render him defenseless. This was the handsome man's mission. The three of them continued on their way, and Lu Yin looked up at the handsome man. He sighed that he was lucky to have encountered such a situation. Otherwise, the King of Adventure would have been in danger. The handsome man and old woman were definitely no match for the Adventurer King. After all, the Adventurer King was at the 6th origin tribulation stage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to help them back then. The difference between the handsome man and old woman was just too great. Even so, they were still confident. They relied on a type of poison, and their target this time was a creature called Che-Ku. This creature was adept at controlling air currents. It had an extraordinary ability to sense and control air currents. The handsome man's mission was to spread the poison in the air. As long as King Adventure attacked Che-Ku, Che-Ku could use the poison in the air to kill King Adventure. There was no need for the handsome man and the others to do anything. Their mission was to spread the poison, record the scene, and seal it in the cold Immortal sect. Will the King of Adventure detect the poison? In the eyes of the handsome man and the old woman, Lu Yin's words were the words of a successful official. The old woman coldly replied, "That won't happen. This poison isn't very toxic, so it won't attract the Adventurer King's attention. However, after Che-Ku uses it, it can be used to kill the Adventurer King. You just have to remember to retreat in time." The handsome man sneered. "Don't worry. Even if we don't want to retreat, the Adventurer King will think of a way to throw us out and let us live." He then sneered. "How sad. Based on my understanding of him, he'll definitely do that." Lu Yin's eyes narrowed and he looked at the handsome man with killing intent. This person didn't seem to have any regrets, and he was even mocking the Adventurer King. Even the old woman didn't like him. The cold Immortal sect's stance was to kill the Adventurer King, but in reality many people admired him. The Adventurer King had not relied on the Lu family to obtain this title, but rather on his own. The four cardinal scales would not show mercy to the remaining members of the Lu family. The missions that the Adventurer King completed every year were extremely dangerous, and even if he managed to survive, the four cardinal scales could not openly attack him. If it weren't for the fact that the Adventurer King had helped Zhou Xian a few decades ago, the Adventurer King would have continued to live until he was eaten by a creature from the mortal realm. Such a person was worthy of respect, but it was a pity that he would die at the hands of such a despicable person. The handsome man did not care about the Adventurer King at all. The reason he had been able to curry favor with the Adventurer King in the past was because of a seemingly life-or-death situation, but in reality the Adventurer King had seen him in a different light. The Adventurer King had helped him complete missions for so many years, and he had successfully obtained a large amount of resources and fame in the Root organization. He had also improved his cultivation, but now that he no longer needed the Adventurer King, his next step was the Cold Immortal sect. With his cultivation as an emissary, he could easily join the four cardinal scales, but he did not want an ordinary position. The Adventurer King's death would allow him to take a high position in the Cold Immortal sect, and he would obtain far more resources than other cultivators in the same realm. This was his true goal. The handsome man was still immersed in his beautiful fantasy, but he did not notice that a blade had been stabbed into his neck. It was a blade that he was very familiar with, one that they had supported each other in the past. This blade's owner was Xianxia. Lu Yin attacked, stabbing through the handsome man's neck and then using the 13 swords technique to easily kill him. He then slashed at the old woman. She was shocked. "What are you doing?" She had not expected this wooden emissary to suddenly attack her. Was he crazy? Lu Yin had never used the 13 swords technique on Xianxia before, as Xianxia did not know how to use the technique. However, Lu Yin could display that sword intent, causing his blade to have a strange aura. More importantly, he had once studied it in the sword steel, which gave him the experience of breaking through 10,000 weapons. The old woman's weapon was rather strange, as it was a pair of hooks. However, Lu Yin's blade quickly found a flaw and severed her arms. The old woman was shocked. "Who are you? You're not Xianxia." She did not believe that Xianxia was her match. Furthermore, her weapon was very difficult for ordinary people to break through, but this person had been able to find a flaw in it. He was definitely not an ordinary person. Lu Yin did not say a word. His saber was heavy, but the saber in his hand felt lighter and more agile. The old woman stepped into the astral source universe in an attempt to escape, but she was still cut down by Lu Yin in the end. Lu Yin returned to the handsome man's corpse, took out the cloud connection stone, and contacted the Adventurer King. Xianxia and the handsome man had fought with the Adventurer King in the mortal realm, so they knew how to contact him. "How much longer until you arrive?" "Che Ku won't stay in one place for too long," the Adventurer King said. Lu Yin replied, "The frigid Immortal sect sent people to kill you. They already know that you helped Zhou Xian, and Che Ku is a method to deal with you." The Adventurer King's expression changed. "Who are you? Where is he?" "He's a traitor and I've already killed him. Hurry up and run, the 4 cardinal scales won't let you off. Just wait quietly, the Lu family will be back soon." Xianxia was not a good person either. He had been saved by the Adventurer King several times, but he had been willing to accompany the handsome man and the old woman to kill the Adventurer King. Lu Yin used Xianxia's body to commit suicide, and his consciousness returned to his chest. The white comma was boiling and expanding slightly. Suicide was indeed useful, as only those between life and death could cultivate death energy. Lu Yin had no idea how the Grim Reaper had created this kind of power. Had he died many times? Or had he been able to merge into someone else's body and die? Lu Yin rolled a 6 twice in a row, but he did not roll it again for the next 2 times. He believed that it would take a long time before he could roll it again. This was all luck. Now he just had to wait patiently for the White Dragon tribe's response. The next day, Lu Yin did not receive any response from the White Dragon tribe, but the culinary god did. When he saw the culinary god's hesitant expression, Lu Yin asked, "Senior, has the matter of the blood pool been settled?" The culinary god nodded and thought about it. "Perhaps this isn't fair to you. After all, you did this for the Academy, and because of this, you were threatened by the White Dragon tribe." The Academy Lu Yin raised a hand and stopped the culinary god from continuing. He looked at the culinary god with a burning gaze. "I'm a mentor of the Academy. As long as it's good for the Academy and the students, I don't care about anything else. What happens to the White Dragon tribe and the 4 cardinal scales have nothing to do with me." The culinary god met Lu Yin's gaze and nodded. "I brought you to the Academy because of your high cultivation at such a young age, and also because of Kue Luo. Although I don't think much of him, I have to admit that the old man has some ability. Although he's brought trouble to the Academy, as long as he's around, his cultivation as a half-ancestor is enough to intimidate others. Now it seems that my decision was right, but my thinking was wrong. You're more suitable for the Academy than Kue Luo, and the Academy is more suitable for you." Lu Yin shrugged. "I can't accept such a heavy responsibility, but I'm curious. What conditions did the White Dragon tribe offer to move Senior?" The culinary god's eyes flickered, but he did not speak for a long time. Lu Yin looked up. "Is it related to Sir Yu?" The culinary god solemnly answered, "The White Dragon tribe is willing to give me a chance to have a fair duel with that bastard. Regardless of life or death, they will not interfere." Lu Yin was shocked. They actually dared to make such a condition? Aren't they afraid that Sir Yu will be killed by Senior? The culinary god sighed. "The White Dragon tribe will not give up on that bastard. Since they dared to make such a condition, it means that they are confident that they can protect that bastard from me. But no matter what, I want this opportunity. I must kill that bastard with my own hands and settle this once and for all." Lu Yin understood. The culinary god's hatred for Sir Yu was no less than Lu Yin's hatred for the 4 cardinal scales. It was closer to Lu Yin's hatred for Night King Zhenwu, and that kind of feeling was enough to make him give up everything. No matter how the White Dragon tribe uses the blood pool to suppress outsiders who join them, it has nothing to do with us. Since those people joined the White Dragon tribe, then that's their fate. Even if this matter was to be exposed, there was no need for it to be exposed to us. However, since we already know about it, then we must take the benefits that we deserve, the culinary god said. He then told Lu Yin about the conditions that the White Dragon tribe had offered to the students and himself. After all, Lu Yin was the one who had discovered the blood pool, so he was treated differently from the others. He also needed to clarify that he had been mistaken. The White Dragon tribe will give you two choices. First, they will reserve a peak for you in Dragon Mountain, the culinary god said. He looked at Lu Yin's blank expression and explained, "This means that as long as you reach the boundary of Dragon Mountain, you will receive the White Dragon tribe's protection. No matter who you offend, even if it's the 4 cardinal scales, the White Dragon tribe will protect you." Lu Yin subconsciously asked, "What if I offend the White Dragon tribe?" The culinary god looked at Lu Yin quietly. "Are you very good at offending people?" Chapter 2266. "I've already offended them regarding the blood pool," Lu Yin muttered. The culinary god replied, "The blood pool incident is over. The White Dragon clan has made this promise multiple times, and they've fulfilled it every single time. The most famous instance was in the Central Realm, where the Lu family was still around. An independent cultivator killed a branch member of the Lu family, and the Lu family did not tolerate him. However, that cultivator received a condition from Dragon Mountain to keep a peak for himself, so he escaped to Dragon Mountain with great difficulty. In the end, he was protected by the White Dragon clan." Lu Yin was astonished. Someone who killed a member of the Lu family was protected? That's right, it's unbelievable. The Lu family is famous for their strength and protectiveness, but that cultivator was still protected. In the end, he died from his origin tribulation, and it had nothing to do with the Lu family. It was considered a normal death for cultivators. As for what price the White Dragon clan paid, no one knows. However, word of this condition spread, and countless people hoped to keep a peak in Dragon Mountain. Lu Yin sighed. To be able to protect someone from the Lu family, the White Dragon clan's promise is indeed worth a lot. "Are you tempted?" the culinary god asked. Lu Yin decisively refused. "No need." The culinary god was astonished. "Really? Or are you worried that the Xia family will use Yuchuan to threaten you?" Lu Yin smiled. "I have a peaceful mind and I'm not good at offending others. If not for the academy, I wouldn't have offended the White Dragon clan, so I might not need to use this condition." The culinary god thought about it and agreed. "Alright, then let's talk about the second option." He raised a finger. "A half-ancestor power vessel." Lu Yin's eyes lit up. "A half-ancestor power vessel?" The culinary god replied, "Looks like that's your choice. Not bad, a half-ancestor power vessel is quite expensive. But it's not as valuable as the first option," Lu Yin said. The culinary god sneered. "The first option is to protect you, but it's also to keep you. Anyone can see your value. Wang Yan has looked for you, right? The frigid Immortal sect has been trying to rope you in, and the Xia family has even brought Yuchuan out for you. The White Dragon clan can't possibly do nothing. If you choose the first option, they'll be able to obtain you and also resolve the matter of the blood pool." Lu Yin smiled. "So if I choose the first option, Senior will stop me as well?" The culinary god shook his head. "I won't stop you. Everyone has their own aspirations." He gazed at the starry sky with melancholy. Now the 4 sides of the scale reign supreme. If you choose to join any of them, no one will blame you. This is also the choice of most cultivators, and it's the same for the students. The academy has nurtured them, but they don't necessarily have to repay the academy. Lu Yin's interest was piqued by the topic, and he asked, "Senior, what are these treasures?" "I don't know about that. I'll inform the White Dragon tribe of your choice and won't let them harass you until we leave," the culinary god said. "Thank you, Senior," Lu Yin said gratefully. The culinary god shook his head. "I'm the one thanking you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even have known that that bastard was at Dragon Mountain. I owe you a favor and I hope I can repay it in the future." He then left. Lu Yin didn't expect to gain any benefits from the White Dragon clan, and the fact that they had given him a half-ancestor was a pleasant surprise. More importantly, he could upgrade this half-ancestor to the progenitor realm, which was the most pleasant surprise. As for leaving a peak in Dragon Mountain to protect his own life, only an idiot would do that. If the White Dragon tribe found out that he was Lu Yin, even if the entire Dragon Mountain belonged to him, it would be useless. The dragon ancestor would be the first to kill him. A giant paper boat floated in the air as a group of students excitedly boarded it, discussing something in groups of 2s and 3s. Wang Xiaofan and the rest had stern expressions, and Lu Kei glanced at Longtian from time to time with an unwilling gaze. The White Dragon tribe's training had ended. Rather than calling it training, it was more like a tour. At least the students hadn't done anything, but they had benefited greatly from the blood pool. Of course, their benefits weren't because of the blood pool, and Lu Yin had already clarified that he had been wrong about the pool. Even though everyone had a tacit understanding, no one dared to leak the information and risk offending the White Dragon tribe. As for Xia Shengguang, Wang Xiaofan and the rest, the White Dragon tribe naturally had other ways to prevent them from leaking the information, but the 4 cardinal scales would definitely find out. Lu Yin had a strange expression as he didn't know how to describe it. In Nong Xinyang's words, it was as if he had eaten dirt. In fact, she was right. Lu Yin had indeed eaten dirt, or more accurately, he had obtained a piece of dirt. Just now, the White Dragon tribe had given him a half-ancestor treasure. It was a piece of dirt that was gray, dirty, and had a strange smell. When he had obtained the dirt, Lu Yin had almost smashed it into Longtian's face. He had actually given him a piece of dirt? What was the meaning of this? After the White Dragon tribe's explanation, Lu Yin finally understood the use of this piece of dirt, and he felt terrible. This piece of dirt came from the mortal realm, and its exact location was right below the ancestral Mang's head. The ancestral Mang slept all year round and would drool while sleeping. This piece of dirt was stained with the ancestral Mang's saliva and was filled with its aura. As long as one held it, no creature would dare to approach, including half-ancestors. This was amazing. Even half-ancestors didn't dare to approach it. Who could say that it wasn't a half-ancestor treasure? As for the power vessel, since it had the ancestral Mang's saliva and innately carried the ancestral Mang's aura, how could it not be a power vessel? After Lu Yin took the piece of dirt, he felt terrible. He quickly stored it in his cosmic ring and boarded the boat under the envious gazes of many from the White Dragon tribe. He felt like he had been tricked. As the boat flew up, he didn't even look back, afraid that he wouldn't be able to restrain himself from cursing. "Mr. Haoyu, I didn't see wrong. The White Dragon tribe just gave you soil that contains the ancestral Mang's saliva, right?" Mr. Wei asked with a smile. Lu Yin was unhappy. "Saliva is saliva. Why do you call it saliva?" Mr. Wei laughed. "Mr. Haoyu, don't underestimate this piece of dirt. As long as you have it with you, no creature in the mortal realm will dare to provoke you. All the resources in the mortal realm will be at your disposal. To the Root organization, this is an absolute treasure that they wouldn't trade for even if you gave it to a half-ancestor. From what I know, the White Dragon tribe has sold quite a few pieces of dirt that contains saliva throughout history. The buyers were either the Lu family or the frigid Immortal sect. The seed garden is a treasure that others can't obtain even if they want it." Lu Yin's eyes lit up. "Is that so?" "That's right, this is definitely an absolute treasure in the mortal realm." At the same time, he wasn't thinking about the mortal realm, but rather the astral beast domain in the 5th mainland. If even a half-ancestor was afraid of something that no creature dared to approach, then what about the astral beast domain? What about the celestial demons? What about the Skymender imperial tutor? They were essentially the same as the creatures in the mortal realm. As long as they weren't humans, they were still creatures, so they should be able to be intimidated by this soil. The more Lu Yin thought about it, the more excited he became. If he used it well, then this thing wouldn't be as simple as a half-ancestor variant treasure. Mr. Wei smiled. "Congratulations, Mr. Haoyu." "Thank you for your guidance, Mr. Wei," Lu Yin said gratefully. Mr. Wei smiled. "I'm just envious and congratulating you." Lu Yin was magnanimous. "Mister, do you want it? This piece of dirt isn't small, so I can give you some." Mr. Wei hurriedly declined. "I don't want to go to the mortal realm. The saliva smell is useless to me, so please keep it for yourself." Lu Yin nodded. "That's right, it's really good stuff. I'll find a chance to go to the mortal realm and try it out." After Mr. Wei left, Bai Weiwei found Lu Yin with a smile. "Mister, the next place to go is my frigid Immortal sect. You won't cause trouble for us, right?" Lu Yin was puzzled. "What do you mean? Who would dare cause trouble for the 4-way scales?" Bai Weiwei smiled. "I've known Mister for so long, so there's no need to beat around the bush. Mister, you want to help Xian Academy, but it's useless. At most you'll be able to buy some time, but you won't be able to change the outcome. You'll even be displeased with the 4-way scales. In the starry sky of the trees, the 4-way scales represent everything." Lu Yin said, "You're worrying too much. I didn't cause trouble for the four-way scales and I don't have the ability to do so. Bai Weiwei smiled. With Mr.'s ability, you can cause trouble for anyone, but my frigid immortal sect has always treated Mr. with respect. Senior apprentice sister specifically instructed me to learn from Mr. In the future Mr. might become a member of my frigid immortal sect. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Senior apprentice sister? Bai Xianer? Bai Weiwei nodded. Senior apprentice sister asked me to send her regards. She then turned and left. Lu Yin looked into the distance. Had Bai Xianer noticed him? Everyone was afraid of her as if she were the ruler of this region. However, in his memories, in the depths of his heart, she would always be a servant that could be pointed at and berated. A bold servant. Just like the Wang family and the White Dragon clan, the frigid immortal sect's acting sect master, Baisu, received Xian Academy. Baisu was waiting far away from the frigid immortal sect, and when she saw the food god she treated him like a junior. Looking at Baisu who was talking to the culinary god respectfully, who would have thought that this person was secretly controlling Xiaoqian to find out the secrets of the White Dragon tribe? He was trying to use Xiaoqian to get close to him. Everyone thought that Baisu was a puppet that was more obedient than Bai Ting. Baisu suddenly looked at Lu Yin and warmly said, "This must be Mr. Haoyu. You're so young and promising. When I was your age I was only a hunter, but you're not only an emissary but also a realm yuan formation master. I admire you." Lu Yin was polite. "Sect Master Baisu is too kind. I was just lucky, but I can't compare to the geniuses of the frigid immortal sect." Baisu laughed. "Mr. Haoyu is the one who's overpraised. There are many in the frigid immortal sect who are of the same age as you, but they can't compare to you. I'm ashamed." After exchanging pleasantries with Lu Yin, Baisu went to chat with Mr. Tang. This Baisu didn't have the slightest air of a sect master. He was more like a, how should she put it, a businessman. Bai Weiwei's expression was ugly. This was embarrassing. The group of Xian Academy students looked relaxed. Based on Baisu's attitude, they felt that they might be able to obtain more benefits in the frigid immortal sect. First it was the Wang family, then the White Dragon clan. These originally lofty four sides of the scale and the rulers of the Astral Tree Galaxy were fighting to give them benefits. Although they didn't know the reason, they didn't need to know. The food god grew impatient. "Sect Master Baisu, what kind of training did the frigid immortal sect prepare for these brats?" Baisu happened to be exchanging pleasantries with Mr. Wei. When she heard the food god's words she turned around and respectfully replied, "Senior, do you know about the heavens beyond heaven?" Chapter 2267. The culinary god was shocked by Baisu's words. Not far from Lu Yin, Mr. Wei, Mr. Tang, Xia Shengguang, Wang Xiaofan, Lu Kei and the others were all shocked. Nong Xinyang even blurted out, "You're willing to open the trial?" Baisu smiled at Nong Xinyang. "It's not really a trial, it's just an experiment. If you're willing you can try it out. It might be beneficial." Lu Yin's eyes twinkled. He knew about it as he had fused with many people's memories, including people like Long Ku. Even though he didn't specifically learn about the frozen immortal sect, the sky beyond was too famous. The so-called sky beyond was the clouds above the frozen immortal sect. In the top realm, there was an unwritten rule that the four scales had the same height. Dragon Mountain's peak, the Wang family's continent's sphere of light, the divine martial sky prison dragon, and the frozen immortal sect's clouds represented the peak of the top realm. Anyone who climbed the clouds would be able to ascend to the sky beyond. The top realm was a layer of heaven and above the clouds was another layer of heaven. This was only one of the explanations for the sky beyond, which was how most people understood it. However, the sky beyond was not only a symbol of status but also a trial. It was very easy for cultivators to tear apart the void and wander the universe. However, it was impossible for them to ascend the clouds. No matter if it was an ordinary cultivator, an emissary or even a half-martial ancestor expert, it was almost impossible for them to ascend the clouds. No one knew what had happened when they attempted to ascend the clouds. They only knew that after everyone attempted to ascend the clouds, they would lose all their memories. They did not have any memories of attempting to ascend the clouds. There was only one kind of person who might know, and that was the person who could truly ascend the clouds. Since ancient times, no matter if it was the cold immortal sect or any other sect or family, there were very few who could ascend to the clouds, including the Lu family before they were exiled. As a result, many people in the Starry Sky Tree knew about the Sky Beyond trial, but no one knew the process. If that was all, it wouldn't have aroused anyone's interest. What really made the Sky Beyond trial famous was that anyone who could ascend to the clouds would become an ancestor. Lu Yin had experienced the era of the 4 young ancestors. The so-called 4 young ancestors were just 4 youths who had used tribulation crystals to break through 3 stages. They possessed strength that far surpassed their peers, and they had a high chance of becoming ancestral ancestors. The reason why they were called ancestral ancestors was not only because of their expectations, but also because of their self-suggestion. In Lu Yin's opinion, they were just like the 12 gate masters of the above heaven era. The 12 heavenly gates sect masters and Tao children were said to have the potential to become ancestors. If all of them became ancestors, the number of ancestors in the human race would be far greater than what they knew. Ancestors would be as numerous as half-ancestors. They only had a high chance of becoming an ancestor, and this included the possibility of self-suggestion. However, the outer heaven trial was different. Anyone who ascended to the clouds and transcended beyond outer heaven would be recognized by the frigid immortal sect as an immortal beyond immortal. As long as these people did not die in an accident, they would all become progenitors. For example, the Lu family had once had a disciple who had completed the outer heaven trial and become an immortal beyond immortal. Of course, that disciple had also died in the sovereign realm. There was also a legend in the frigid immortal sect about a person named Bai Xing who had transcended beyond outer heaven and become an immortal beyond immortal before finally becoming an progenitor. The founder of Xian Academy, Progenitor Wen, had also undergone the outer heaven trial and ascended to the clouds to become an immortal beyond immortal. The outer heaven trial did not allow one to become an ancestor, but rather, it was almost like a prophecy. In any case, it was recorded in history that those who had ascended to the clouds had all become ancestors as long as they had not died in an accident. In the eyes of many, the probability of becoming an ancestor through the outer heaven trial was much higher than that of the 5. The 4th young ancestor was someone like that. However, the number of people who could complete the trial was so small that it was almost negligible. The culinary god looked deeply at Bai Su. Is your frigid immortal sect really willing to allow these children to attempt the outer heaven trial? The outer heaven trial was not something that anyone could attempt just because they wanted to. Even the Lu family had to pay a price in exchange for this opportunity. Bai Su smiled. Of course. You are all future elites of the human race, and my frigid immortal sect is willing to do our best to help you. It would be even better if someone could complete the outer heaven trial. The culinary god did not have high expectations for this. Ever since the Daoist sect had been established, only 8 people had completed the trial. 1 from the Lu family, 2 from the frigid immortal sect, 1 from Shenwu planet, 1 from the seedling garden, and progenitor Wen and 2 other gifted independent cultivators. The Lu families by Xing from the frigid immortal sect, the 1 from the seedling garden, progenitor Wen, and 1 of the independent cultivators had all become ancestors. 5 people had become ancestors, and the disciple from Shenwu planet who had completed the trial and another gifted independent cultivator had been assassinated. The murderer was still a mystery, but it was speculated that it was Redback of the eternal race. The other person from the frigid immortal sect was Bai Xianer. Countless people had attempted the outer heaven trial, but only a few had succeeded. How could the culinary god have any expectations? He looked in the direction of the frigid immortal sect and fused with Long Ku's memories. Not a single one of the 7 heroes had attempted the outer heaven trial. Many people were interested in this trial and they would do everything they could to attempt it, but there were also many who were unwilling to do so. Even though it was called a trial, it was naturally dangerous. Those who succeeded would definitely become ancestors, and those who failed would end up crippled. Almost no one who attempted the Grand Master's trial succeeded. Among those who failed, a considerable portion of them were crippled. They looked like normal people, but they did not know how to cultivate. Some of them even suffered from qi deviation, causing them to be neither human nor ghost. Many people did not dare to attempt the trial of Grandmaster's trial. Regardless, the frigid immortal sect was willing to open this trial to the students of Xian Academy, which was a stroke of good fortune for these students. Not long after, the paper boat arrived at the frigid immortal sect. Looking at the endless frigid immortal sect, for some reason, there was an indescribable sense of majesty. It was like a giant prostrating on the ground, and if it stood up, it would shake the heavens and earth. The Wang family's continent gave off a lofty feeling, the Dragon Mountain gave off a lofty feeling, and the frigid immortal sect gave off a dignified feeling. What they cared about the most was the clouds within the frigid immortal sect. Each of those clouds emitted a white light that was gentle and comfortable, and it prevented people from having any distracting thoughts. It was like the vaporized root of wisdom tea, which was the root of wisdom that the Hui family had planted. Although its effects were not as good as the root of wisdom that the Hui family had planted, it was enough to calm people's minds and restrain distracting thoughts. Wuxia walked out to welcome the food god. Not long after, the people from Xian Academy were brought into the frigid immortal sect. He had thought that the frigid immortal sect would give a glorious history speech like the Wang family and the White Dragon clan, but he had not expected them to be so straightforward and directly ask for a trial. The food god did not refuse, and the students had been on their paper boats the entire time, so they were not too tired. Xian Academy came at the right time. Coincidentally, my frigid immortal sect also has a group of disciples who want to try the outer heaven trial. Why don't we go together? The food god followed his gaze and saw a group of frigid immortal sect disciples standing at the foot of the mountain. There were more than 100 of them, and there were both men and women. They all had arrogant expressions, but their gazes were calm. They did not make any noise, and their attitudes were completely different from the chattering students from Xian Academy. You want the frigid immortal sect disciples to compete with the students from Xian Academy? The food god's tone was not pleasant. Wuxiao smiled. It's just a coincidence. What, you don't dare? Before the food god could reply, Mr. Tang spoke up. From what I know, the frigid immortal sect disciples have 3 chances to try the outer heaven trial, but the students from Xian Academy know nothing about it. This competition is not fair. Wuxiao said disdainfully. Could it be that Mr. Tang wants the competition to be fair? Mr. Tang frowned. The frigid immortal sect was the complete opposite of the Wang family and the White Dragon clan. The White Dragon clan wanted to rope in the students, while the frigid immortal sect wanted to suppress them. However, this might not be a bad idea, so the students could see the frigid immortal sect's strength. Many of them hoped to become disciples of the frigid immortal sect. Xian Academy could not refuse the frigid immortal sect's suggestion. Even if the academy did not agree, the frigid immortal sect disciples could just stay away from the clouds. All right, let's do that, the food god said, glancing at the students. The Wang family and the White Dragon clan's attempts to rope in the students had caused some of them to become complacent. They could use this opportunity to ask the frigid immortal sect to suppress them. The food god no longer considered whether they would join the frigid immortal sect or not. Even if they did not join the frigid immortal sect, they would join the Wang family and the White Dragon clan. If it were not for the internal conflict between the Four-Side Scale and Xian Academy, they would not have been respected by the Wang family and the White Dragon clan. It was time to wake them up. The food god hoped to use the frigid immortal sect to suppress the students who had become complacent, but he did not expect to be suppressed so ruthlessly. In the sky there seemed to be an invisible staircase. One by one the youths walked up in a daze, aiming for the clouds above their heads. An hour later 2 distinct colors appeared in the sky. One was white, which represented the frigid immortal sect's disciples, while the other was white, which represented the Xian Academy's students. There were clothes of all colors, and when they looked up, it was as if a curtain had fallen, with white occupying the top. In other words, almost all of the Xian Academy's students had been suppressed. There were more than 40 youths in the sky, and they each represented the frigid immortal sect and Xian Academy's explorers who were below the explorer realm. At the same realm, not a single student from Xian Academy could surpass the frigid immortal sect's disciples. Wuxiao was satisfied, as this was how it should be. Xian Academy's requirements for recruiting students were very high, and not many could join. Were the frigid immortal sect's requirements any lower? Wrong. Even the White Dragon clan, which had the weakest background in the Four-Side Scale, had the same requirements for their own disciples and foreign cultivators. Xian Academy represented the top elites of the Middle Realm, while the Four-Side Scale represented the Upper Realm, Middle Realm, and Lower Realm. If there was a choice between Xian Academy and the frigid immortal sect, who would choose Xian Academy unless they had ulterior motives? Currently, half of the Xian Academy's students came from various clans and sects, and the most outstanding geniuses came from the Four-Side Scale and the Seed Garden. The Lu family's cultivation did not only depend on talent, but also resources. Furthermore, these disciples had all experienced the sky beyond heaven's trial, so they naturally surpassed the Xian Academy's students. Chapter 2268. This scene was within the food god's expectations, but it dealt a heavy blow to the other students. Although the trial was for students below the explorer realm, the frigid immortal sect had also sent out students at that level. When it came time for the explorer, cruiser and hunter realm students, the frigid immortal sect would send out their own disciples as well. They had been completely suppressed, which left many students confused. They had expected to be friendly, but what happened to roping them in? How could this be? Many students had thought that the frigid immortal sect would be like the Wang family and the White Dragon clan, but they were wrong. The frigid immortal sect wanted to suppress them and then retaliate, not just rope them in. What was the difference between this and the Wang family and the White Dragon clan? Wang Xiaofan and Xia Shengguang exchanged glances, their eyes burning with passion. They had wanted to try the sky beyond trial for a long time, but they had not expected to get the chance to do so at Xian Academy. They were confident that they were not any worse than the 4 young masters, and the only thing they lacked was luck. Now luck was on their side. Not just the 4 young masters, but even the older and more glorious 7 heroes had not tried the sky beyond trial. No, Bai Xiaohong must have tried it. They were already impatient. Student Bai, have you tried the sky beyond trial? Luyin asked. Bai Weiwei replied, I have, but I failed. I can only reach 30,000 meters at most and I'm still halfway to the clouds. Even you can only reach 30,000 meters. It really is difficult. Luyin sighed. Does Sir want to try it? Bai Weiwei asked. Luyin was surprised. Can I? Bai Weiwei smiled. I'll ask later. It should be possible. Lu Yin's eyes flickered and he looked up at the sky. If he could, would he try it? During the era of the 7 heroes he had not tried it. Was it because the Lu family had stopped him or something else? There had to be a reason why the 7 heroes had not tried it. Was it good or bad? With these thoughts in mind, the youths fell from the sky one by one. The best frigid immortal sect disciple had climbed several thousand meters and was looking down on everyone else. Unfortunately, he was still far from Bai Weiwei's 30,000 meters, let alone reach the clouds. Xian Academy's top student was not even half as high as the frigid immortal sect disciple, which made many students fall silent. Suddenly, there was a wail as a student clutched his head and fell to the ground. The culinary god hurried over to take a look, and Lu Yin also stepped forward to stare at the student. No matter how the culinary god shouted, the student seemed to have lost his mind. His eyes were lifeless and he would occasionally laugh or cry. On the other side, a disciple from the frigid immortal sect shouted in horror, claiming that he couldn't cultivate anymore. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't control the star energy in his body. The other students of Xian Academy were terrified when they saw this, and many of them wanted to retreat. Lu Yin frowned, unable to understand why things had turned out this way. The culinary god did not blame the cold immortal sect. Wu Yao and Bai Su had reminded them before the attempt. At the same time, the culinary god also made the cultivators who attempted to ascend to the clouds promise to keep everything they knew a secret. Regardless of whether he remembered it or not, the trials of the heavens beyond heaven were not allowed to be spread to outsiders. The crazy student was brought back. The culinary god glanced at the students and said in a low voice, "Cultivation won't be smooth sailing. Some of you are independent cultivators and you've already experienced life and death on your way to the academy. Some of you have clans or sects backing you, so your cultivation has been smooth sailing. But once you leave these, what will you have? Whether it's cultivating in the academy or adventuring outside, you'll have to experience life and death. I can see fear in your eyes, but I can also see anticipation. You can choose not to go through this trial." Wu Yao and the other cultivators from the frigid immortal sect looked at the Xian Academy students with interest. The frigid immortal sect's disciples all had arrogant looks on their faces, as if they were superior. This was the frigid immortal sect's goal and no one wanted to be outdone. Since they couldn't reach that position in Xian Academy, then they might as well join the frigid immortal sect. The explorers and hunters all walked out with resolute looks on their faces. Since they had decided to come out, they were willing to accept the consequences, even if it meant losing their minds. The frigid immortal sect's disciples' gazes didn't change. They knew much more about the outer sky than the Xian Academy students, and they had long since known that such a situation would occur. As for the disciple who couldn't use star energy, he faced the fate of being abandoned. This was the cruel and merciless world of cultivation. One cultivator after another ascended, their eyes glazed over. This time, Xian Academy wasn't as miserable. There were a few students who could match the frigid Immortal sect's disciples, or even surpass them. For example, the little fatty was fat, but his speed was very fast. He continued to climb, fat and steady. He overtook one frigid Immortal sect disciple after another, and Bai Su and Wu Yao couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. Very few people could be so fast on their first attempt at the outer sky. This speed was comparable to Bai Weiwei's. Bai Weiwei hadn't expected the little fatty to be so fast, and she was a little surprised. However, the little fatty was only fast in the early stages. When he reached 15,000 meters, he began to slow down. A female disciple from the frigid Immortal sect was hot on his heels. Although she was slow, she was more stable, and she gradually caught up to the little fatty. The two of them were neck and neck, and the rest of the students were left behind. In the end, the little fatty overtook the female disciple, but he failed when he was close to 80,000 meters. He almost reached Bai Weiwei's original height. After landing, two students from Xian Academy had problems. One of them kept meowing like a cat and completely lost his mind. The other was motionless as if he were dead. No matter what was done to him, he was still dead. His eyes were still open, and it was a horrifying sight to behold. As for the frigid Immortal sect, there were also two problems. One of them had a very strange posture and didn't dare to put it down. The other was constantly laughing. His laughter was so disgusting that it made people shiver. He was immersed in his own world. Lu Yin exhaled. This thing was really strange. The outer sky trial didn't look at one's cultivation base. Even if it was the trial of a half-step ancestor, there might be all kinds of strange symptoms after failure. And this was just the beginning. The others were fine now, but they might also have strange symptoms after returning. The food god looked at the remaining students. They were Xia Shengguang and Wang Xiaofan's group. Strictly speaking, this group of people was not from Xian Academy. They represented the Square Scale, the Seed Garden, and the Lu family. However, they were more than happy to be able to use Xian Academy's name to attempt the Grandmaster's trial. 3 Enlighters walked out from the frigid Immortal sect. The appearance of these 3 shocked the students from Xian Academy who had already passed the trial. These 3 people meant that the frigid Immortal sect had 3 more Enlighters in their generation. How shocking was that? Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This was the foundation of a colossus. Wang Xiaofan and Bai Weiwei were about the same age as the former 10 arbiters. In the entire 5th mainland, there were only 10 Enlighters in the Outerverse, and even if one added the Neoverse, there wouldn't be more than 20. 20 of them were still hunters, and some had only become Enlighters when they were over 40 years old. However, the frigid Immortal sect could produce 4 Enlighters. Bai Weiwei was even qualified to challenge an emissary as an Enlighter. What kind of foundation was this? In comparison, the White Dragon tribe was far inferior. They couldn't even find a decent elite in this generation. There might be cultivators from outside the tribe, but they might as well not bring them out. When the 3 Enlighters saw Bai Weiwei, they bowed respectfully. "Senior sister." Bai Weiwei glanced at them. "Let me see how much progress you've made." The 3 disciples looked at each other. Yes. When the trial began, a total of 10 people started to climb the clouds. The most eye-catching one was naturally Bai Weiwei, and her speed left the little fatty speechless. Although his eyes were also glazed over, she continued to ascend. In the blink of an eye, she had already traversed 3,000 meters, and she continued to climb. Following closely behind were not the 3 Enlighters from the frigid Immortal sect, but Wang Xiaofan, followed by Xia Shengguang and the other 3 disciples from the frigid Immortal sect. After them were Qing Feng, Nong Xinyang, and Jin Zhongshan. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on the last person, and that person was Lu Quebec. No one had expected Lu Ke to be the slowest, not even Wu Yao. Among this generation's geniuses, Lu Ke was known as the person closest to the 4 young ancestors. He was an absolute expert of his generation, and he could kill Jin Zhongshan with a single finger. However, such a person had actually been left behind by Jin Zhongshan. It wasn't that Jin Zhongshan was talented. If he was, he wouldn't have been ranked behind. It was just that Lu Ke's performance in this trial was too poor. The Sky Beyond Heaven trial doesn't look at cultivation, so no one knows what will happen. It's obvious that Lu Ke isn't used to it, Mr. Tang sighed. Not necessarily. The culinary god watched Lu Ke slowly ascend. Let's wait and see. After a while, Bai Weiwei reached a height of 30,000 meters, and ordinary people couldn't see her from below. As for Wang Xiaofan, who was originally not far from her, he had stopped. Xia Shengguang also stopped not far from Wang Xiaofan. Everyone looked up at the sky. The clouds emitted a soft white light that fell like pillars of light. Bai Weiwei looked like a fairy, beautiful and unattainable. Bai Weiwei was still ascending, and Wu Yao's eyes were filled with anticipation. If the frigid immortal sect produced someone who could become an immortal, it would have a huge impact on the future situation. They would also be one step closer to the Lu family. The reason why the Lu family could control the fifth mainland was not only because of the Lu family's ancestor, but also because of the ancestor realm. They could even call upon the ancestor realm. This was something that other families could never compare with. The only thing they could do was to train as many ancestor realm powerhouses as possible. However, Wu Yao's idea fell through as soon as it rose. Bai Weiwei stopped when she reached a height of 20,000 meters. She was still 30,000 meters away from the clouds, which was unreachable. Wang Xiaofan and Xia Shengguang stopped when they reached a height of 13,000 meters. They were far from Bai Weiwei's level. Qing Feng was still several thousand meters away from Wang Xiaofan, not even 30,000 meters. Nong Xinyang was second only to Qing Feng, followed by Lu Ke and Jin Zhongshan. Unknowingly, Lu Ke had surpassed Jin Zhongshan and was not far from Nong Xinyang and Qing Feng. As for the three disciples of the frigid immortal sect, they were second only to Xia Shengguang and Wang Xiaofan. They had already experienced the trial, but they still couldn't compare to these two. Now everyone should have reached their limit, and those who should stop had stopped. Only one person was still climbing slowly, and that was Lu Ke. Chapter 2269. Lu Ke's eyes were sluggish. Carrying the Ke sword on his back, he slowly passed Nong Xinyang and Qing Feng. Then one by one he passed the disciples of Hanxian sect. Under the ugly expressions of the three disciples, he directly passed Xia Shengguang and Wang Xiaofan. He was constantly approaching Bai Weiwei. The group of Yixin Academy students was excited. Compared to Bai Weiwei and the others, Lu Ke's face was cold, but he was still outside the four-way scale. They would rather Lu Ke surpass Bai Weiwei. Unfortunately, Lu Ke stopped 3,000 feet away from Bai Weiwei and failed to pass her. What a pity. If he could do it again, Lu Ke would definitely surpass everyone and even touch the clouds, Mr. Tang said regretfully. Bai Su smiled at Mr. Tang. Mr. Tang doesn't know much about Sky Beyond. In fact, the last 10,000 feet is the real trial. Those who are qualified to participate in the Sky Beyond trial are all top geniuses, such as those who have surpassed 10,000 feet. If they were given another chance, they might be able to surpass 20,000 feet, so the real test is the last 10,000 feet. Since ancient times, there have been no less than 1,000 people who have surpassed 20,000 feet, but only 20 or 30 people have the potential to touch the clouds. Those 20 or 30 people have already left their names in the annals of history. With that, the trial ended and the group landed on the ground. Everyone looked at them nervously, afraid that they would go crazy or become strange. Fortunately, they didn't change at all. At this time, Bai Su suddenly spoke up. Mr. Haoyu, are you interested in giving it a try? Wu Yao looked at Bai Su in surprise. Haoyu, the sect decided to let this person take the trial? Bai Weiwei was also surprised. She wanted to ask, but she didn't expect Bai Su to suddenly invite Mr. Haoyu. It seemed that the sect was very interested in roping in Haoyu and Celestial Master Gu Yan. The food god wasn't surprised. Lu Yin had displayed shocking lock-breaking abilities in the Wang family, so he was definitely worth roping in. Lu Yin pointed at himself. Me? Can I? Bai Su nodded with a smile. Of course, as long as Mr. Tang is willing. This wasn't the Hanxian sect's decision but his own. It was all because of the information he had obtained from Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian followed his instructions and purposely approached this Mr. Haoyu. It was Yu Hao. Although nothing happened, they chatted a lot. From Zhou Xian, Bai Su learned that Yu Hao might join the divine martial heaven, but he was forced to do so. He wanted to join the cold immortal sect. It was this information that made Bai Su decide to give it a try. If he could rope Yu Hao in, he would have made a great contribution. Even if he had to step down from his position as acting sect master, his status in the sect would still be higher. Moreover, Yu Hao's background and ability were both extremely high, so there was no harm in showing goodwill. Lu Yin looked at the food god. The food god coughed. My words were meant for these students. Sir, please don't mind them. Lu Yin glanced at the students. If he didn't go, he would be looked down upon. Although he didn't care, Nong Xinyang encouraged him. Sir, work hard. Qing Feng said with admiration, Sir, you must have climbed the highest. Sir, you're mighty. Mr. How you go. Lu Yin was speechless, and his mind raced through the speculations of the 7 prodigies not trying to become a realm beyond heaven. He then looked at the students, and with his own ability, it shouldn't be a problem. At worst, he could just put on a show. He walked forward. Since the cold immortal sect has agreed, I'll give it a try. Baisu smiled and gestured for him to go ahead. Just as Lu Yin was about to begin, Wu Yao shouted, Wait. Everyone thought that he was going to object. Baisu's expression changed, as if Wu Yao objected to his decision in front of everyone. The sect would be faced with the question of whether to choose him or Wu Yao. Actually, there was no need to choose, as Baisu would definitely be abandoned. He had been too careless, and he should have discussed this with Wu Yao in advance. Wu Yao spoke up. My cold immortal sect also has an emissary who wishes to participate in the trial. Mr. Haoyu, I hope you don't mind going with him. Baisu sighed in relief. Fortunately, Lu Yin wasn't trying to stop him. Lu Yin smiled. Of course I don't mind. Wu Yao nodded. What he wanted was for anyone from Xian Academy to be suppressed. From the Explorer realm to the Hunter realm, being suppressed by the little fatty from Xian Academy was an accident. As for the Enlighter realm, Bai Weiwei was the highest, as she represented the cold immortal sect. As for this Mr. Haoyu, even an emissary had to be suppressed. The emissary from the cold immortal sect had a triangular face. It was a very strange triangular face, and he didn't look human at all. No one from Xian Academy recognized this person. The Cosmic Tree realm was too large, and there were hidden powerhouses in any of the 9 districts of the Middle Realm. There were even more emissaries. Although Lu Yin didn't know this person's identity, if Wu Yao had been able to find him, then he was probably very confident that he could suppress Lu Yin in the realm beyond heaven trial. Palace, the triangular-faced person introduced himself. Lu Yin replied, Xian Academy, how you? The triangular-faced person nodded and looked at Wu Yao. Wu Yao said, You may begin. I've always heard of Mr. and what happened in the Wang family is especially admirable. Mr. is recognized as the genius most likely to become an Origin Array Heavenly Master. I look forward to Mr.'s brilliance in this realm beyond heaven trial and shaking the heavens. Lu Yin smiled bitterly. Senior thinks too highly of this junior. I'm just giving it a try, and I might not be able to reach as high as those children. Wu Yao's face darkened, but he smiled at Lu Yin's words and gestured for him to begin. He was just being polite. Lu Yin looked up. He hadn't felt anything before, but now that he was standing on the mountain peak where the realm beyond heaven trial was held, his surroundings had become much quieter. A ray of light shone down and warmed Lu Yin's body. Not far away, the triangular-faced person rose into the sky. He was very fast, but he couldn't compare to Bai Weiwei. Although he was a 3rd tribulation cultivator, the realm beyond heaven trial didn't care about cultivation. Everyone stared at Lu Yin, wanting to see him take the first step. Lu Yin took a deep breath and stepped forward. In that instant, the ray of light that shone on his body caused his vision to become scorching white, and he couldn't see anything. However, it was only for a moment, as he saw a crab in the next instant. A crab? At the bottom of a dark river, a crab crawled quickly from one hole to another, and then came out of the hole looking for something. Among the algae, a strange fish full of sharp teeth swam out. It stared at the crab and suddenly rushed out like a sharp arrow. The crab quickly drilled into the bottom of the river, but its 2 legs were bitten off by the strange fish. The strange fish chewed with a greedy look in its eyes and rushed into the hole at the bottom of the river, trying to eat the crab. Soon, the chewed-up crab shell floated up from the hole at the bottom of the river, accompanied by the chewed crab legs. Then the strange fish swam out again and rushed into the algae to find its next prey. Lu Yin experienced life, death. He felt like he had experienced life and death. It was as if he had become a crab and been eaten by a fish. The feeling was extremely devastating. That crab was him and he was the crab. He had been eaten by that strange fish. That feeling of despair still shrouded him. Was this the realm beyond heaven trial? Why did it feel similar to the combination of 6 pips on a die? Below, everyone watched. They didn't know what Lu Yin had experienced. They only knew that he had lifted his foot and was rising, his eyes dull. Lu Yin felt like he had experienced a long time, but to others, it was only a moment. The light that shrouded him pulled him up, but it seemed like he was climbing up by himself. Lu Yin suddenly realized that this was the realm beyond heaven trial. No wonder some of the students were acting so strangely. They had become a new species and couldn't walk out. Perhaps in their view of life, humans were just another species. This was a world of lunatics. Lu Yin's eyes regained their clarity in an instant. He thought about many things, and in the blink of an eye, his vision turned white again. He saw a swallow, and then he became that swallow. There were no other thoughts in his mind. He was the swallow, and the swallow's life was his life. He seemed to have experienced many springs, summers, autumns, and winters. He had experienced migrations, hunts, and finally he had died under a sharp arrow. The swallow's death brought despair once more. Regardless of whether it was the swallow or Lu Yin who had died, the feeling was real. How many people in this world could face death peacefully? It wasn't close to death, it was truly dead. Lu Yin understood why most people couldn't pass the realm beyond heaven trial. It was because they couldn't face death directly. They couldn't bear the despair, pain, and final erasure. But for him it seemed like he was used to it. He had even committed suicide several times. Gradually the people below felt that something was wrong. Lu Yin's speed was getting faster and faster. At first he was slower than the triangular-faced man, but after an incense stick's worth of time, he had caught up to him and reached a height of nearly 30,000 feet. Then, without any suspense, he surpassed the triangular-faced man. The triangular-faced man didn't know. His eyes were dull as he experienced the cycle of life and death, but the people below saw it clearly. Bai Weiwei was shocked. How could he be so fast? Although she didn't remember what she had experienced, she knew from others that her speed was already very fast, comparable to Bai Xiaohong. How could Mr. Haoyu be so fast? This was the first time he had experienced it. Wu Yao's face was ugly. He had actually surpassed the palace. The frigid immortal sect had been suppressed. It was all Bai Su's fault for being meddlesome. She had insisted on this child's trial, and the results were not good for them. Bai Su's face twitched. Wasn't Mr. Haoyu's talent in lock-breaking? How could he be so powerful in the realm beyond heaven trial? This couldn't be right. Could lock-breaking be helpful in the realm beyond heaven trial? Bai Su wasn't the only one who thought so. The others also thought so. Lu Yin's lock-breaking ability was obvious to all. He had easily crushed Bai Weiwei, and he could guide ordinary cultivators to arrange a sourcebox array. This was not something that could be done purely by experience or talent. It was a combination of both. When Zhu passed the trial. It seems that lock-breaking is really helpful in the realm beyond heaven trial, Mr. Tang muttered to himself. The culinary god was surprised. Was that so? Lu Yin had experienced life and death, and he was getting closer and closer to the clouds. He was about to reach 20,000 feet, which was the height that Bai Weiwei had reached. Everyone watched nervously. Would Mr. Haoyu surpass Bai Weiwei? Bai Weiwei's palms were sweating. How talented was this Mr. Haoyu? The Xia family was really blind. If they had known that he was so talented, wouldn't they have treated him like a treasure? They actually sent Xia Zhitong to cause trouble and almost forced the Yu family to become a mortal enemy. No, the sect must take this person down. Chapter 2270. Lu Yin reached 60,000 feet, and this time he saw a teapot. Could a teapot work? What would a teapot experience? Making tea, pouring tea, and smashing it. This was the teapot's life that Lu Yin had experienced. He couldn't understand how he had become a teapot. The die's 6 pips could be integrated into a living being, but it couldn't be integrated into an inanimate object. The closest thing to an inanimate object was a mechanical ant, but mechanical ants were also living beings. The one that Lu Yin had integrated into had sentience and consciousness, so it was essentially an intelligent life form. After becoming a teapot, Lu Yin felt that time passed very slowly. In his mind, decades had passed, and the teapot that he had become was a quasi-antique. In the end, it had been smashed. After 60,000 feet, Lu Yin was still slowly rising. He was already numb to life and death because he was in the outer sky trial, so he didn't know that the black and white comma in his heart was spinning wildly and expanding. Life and death had awakened the death aura and strengthened his unique power. This was something that he didn't know yet. One by one, the cultivators from the frigid Immortal sect arrived and looked up at the sky in surprise. They watched Lu Yin move slowly but steadily towards the clouds. Wu Yao was shocked. If Lu Yin could reach this height on his first try, would he be able to touch the clouds if he was given a few more chances? Ascending the clouds and becoming a celestial being had long been ruled out by those who were familiar with the trials of the realm beyond heaven. Many of the frigid Immortal sect's disciples only hoped to touch the clouds, and Lu Yin had shown that it was possible to do so. Few cultivators in the history of the frigid Immortal sect could achieve this. If this kid could really touch the clouds, Wu Yao's eyes widened. His value to the sect wouldn't just be limited to Jiyu and Celestial Master Gu Yan. Not only the frigid Immortal sect, but the Xia family and the other two families would also be crazy about obtaining him. Lu Yin had become a piece of dried fish. That's right, a dried fish that had been dried in the sun. It had no consciousness of its own, but strangely it had a consciousness. It wasn't the fish itself but the dried fish's consciousness. A new consciousness had been bestowed upon this piece of dried fish, and it was quickly devoured. The horror of being chewed on was enough to drive anyone crazy. His speed slowed down and wasn't as fast as before, but he still rose steadily. No one was more familiar with this feeling than Lu Yin. He was someone who had committed suicide more than once, so he was very familiar with death. Everyone's willpower was different. Their understanding of death and their attitude towards it would be different. This was the Grandmaster's trial. Lu Yin surpassed Bai Weiwei, which brought great shock to the cold Immortal sect. Bai Weiwei looked up at the position where Lu Yin had just passed her. Under the clouds and the light, Lu Yin seemed to have an additional layer of divinity. Especially when he stared at Yu Hao's face, countless women were intoxicated. From the ground to 100,000 feet in the air there was a threshold. From 100,000 feet in the air to 100,000 feet in the air was also a threshold. And the final threshold was the final 10,000 feet. This was known as ascending to immortality with every step. Countless geniuses had stopped at this point. For example, Bai Weiwei, if she was given another chance, she might be able to reach the final height of 10,000 feet. Bai Xiaohong, as well as the past geniuses of the cold Immortal sect, had almost all reached the final height of 10,000 feet. Looking from the ground, it was only 29,000 feet. It was very difficult to go any further. Most of the trial geniuses stopped here. Only a few people could set foot on this high altitude and climb towards the clouds. Wu Yao, how was Bai Xian'er's trial in outer sky? The food god suddenly asked. This question attracted everyone's attention. Bai Xian'er was a legend and was of the same generation as the seven heroes, but she was considered an existence that surpassed them. She had already reached an unknown level at such a young age. Some people said that she was an emissary, some said that she was a half-ancestor, and some said that she was trying to break through to the progenitor realm. No one knew what her cultivation level was. Even Wu Yao, an unruly half-martial ancestor, had to be respectful when he mentioned Bai Xian'er. It was Bai Xian'er's instructions that helped him resolve the crisis. It could be said that in the entire starry sky of trees, Wu Yao respected and feared Bai Xian'er the most, apart from the progenitors. Everyone knew that Bai Xian'er had passed the trial, but they were curious about the process. I don't know, Wu Yao replied. Then what about Bai Xiaohong? The food god asked. Wu Yao looked at the food god. There's no point in asking about someone who's already dead. Is it inconvenient to say? The food god asked. Bai Su said, in the last 1,000 feet 1 step was 10 feet. Young ancestor Bai Xiaohong reached the 700th step and was ranked in the top 10 in the history of the frozen Immortal sect. Everyone was shocked. Bai Xiaohong was ranked in the top 10? How many progenitors had the frozen Immortal sect produced in the past? Which one of these progenitors wasn't a peerless genius? Which one of them was weaker than their peers? Even so, Bai Xiaohong was still ranked in the top 10. It was clear that his talent was extraordinary. Unfortunately, he had died too early. The most hateful one was that bastard from the Lu family. If it wasn't for Lu Xiaoxian, the young ancestor wouldn't have died so young. The astral tree realm would have had another progenitor in the future. An elder of the frozen Immortal sect said resentfully. Bai Su sighed. Yes, in the history of the frozen Immortal sect, there were very few people who could reach the 700th step. As long as they didn't die young, they could have become half-ancestors without exception. It's not impossible for them to become progenitors. What a pity. Bai Weiwei's eyes dimmed. Every disciple of the frozen immortal sect could attempt the skies beyond trial 3 times. She had already tried twice, and even if she tried again, she wasn't confident that she could reach the top 3,000 feet, let alone the 700th step. Was the difference in strength between her and Bai Xiaohong really that great? If Bai Xiaohong could do this, then what about her senior sister? How far could the 7 heroes of the past reach? With this thought, all of her pride vanished and she subconsciously looked up at Lu Yin, who was slowly climbing. How high could this person reach? Could he be comparable to Bai Xiaohong? Perhaps he was the true genius who could rival the 4th young ancestor. A day later, Lu Yin reached the final 3,000 feet under everyone's shocked gazes. This was the ascending to immortality with every step. Wu Yao's breathing stagnated. Was this kid really that talented? Even Bai Xiaohong couldn't reach this height during his first trial. In fact, he was far from it. Could he really touch the clouds? After reaching the final 3,000 feet, Lu Yin turned into a stone. Only the heavens knew how a stone could have consciousness, and it was especially clear. I am a stone. A stone cannot move. It has no life. I am a stone. A stone cannot move. It has no life. I am a stone. A stone cannot move. It has no life. Lu Yin was very clear that he was a stone and he didn't know anything else. However, he had an incomparably clear consciousness. This consciousness allowed him to see the earth through the sandstorm, the boundless grasslands, and all kinds of strange creatures. He had been trampled on, used as a weapon, and even fallen into a river. After floating for many years, he had reached the bottom of the river and reached an unknown depth. His consciousness was very clear, too clear. It was so clear that he was a stone that could feel the existence of time. He had created the word time, the word flow, and all kinds of words that came from the stone's understanding of the earth. He had also made the stone feel the terror of time. How long had it been? Countless years. It had truly been countless years. Any other creature that had maintained such a clear consciousness would have turned into stone and gone insane. However, Lu Yin had not, because he had seen time. Time was a formless existence, but he had seen it. The feeling that time had brought him was instantly erased. No matter how long it had been, it was just a feeling. It was a feeling that could drive a person crazy, but it was fine as long as he got rid of it. Lu Yin suddenly opened his eyes and took a step forward. It wasn't a single step, but a single step. He had crossed nearly half of it, reaching the 500th step. Below him, Wu Yao's pupils shrank. Impossible. He stared blankly. Baisu was also stunned. Anyone who had reached the final 3,000 feet would have to cross 10 feet with each step. There were only a few exceptions, such as Bai Xing, Wenzu, and all those strange people who could reach the clouds. There was also Bai Xianer. Aside from them, no one else had ever crossed dozens of feet in a single step. However, this person had not crossed dozens of feet but 1,500 feet. This had never been recorded in history. The culinary god raised an eyebrow. Based on his understanding of Beyond Heaven's trial and Wu Yao's reactions, this how you had done something incredible. It seemed like the consequences would be even more severe than what had happened to the Wang family and the White Dragon clan. Lu Yin didn't know about the legends of the final 3,000 feet. He only knew that his perception of time was becoming increasingly clear. Before coming to the Cosmic Tree realm, he had used Wendy Yushan to sense time, but it had been useless. Later, he had used Junior Progenitor Planet's resources to upgrade the aged withered tree, and then used Desolate Ancestor's reversal step to successfully reverse spacetime. He had a preliminary perception of time, but it had always been very vague. Just now, he seemed to be able to sense time. If he did it again, perhaps he would be able to sense time again. At the same time, he also understood why some people became strange after the trial. For example, if he hadn't woken up, he really would have turned into a stone. How long had a person lived until now? Decades? Centuries? How long could a stone exist? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Or even longer? Compared to the clear consciousness of a stone, a person's existence lasted only for an instant. Thus, some people became a different kind of creature after the trial. This was because, in their understanding, a person's life until now might have been a fantasy. Fortunately, he had a perception of time. Otherwise, he might have become like that. Looking up, the clouds were within reach. Then let's continue. Since I can sense time, there's nothing to be afraid of. The triangular-faced emissary had already landed and watched Lu Yin ascend step by step. He couldn't help but glance at Wu Yao. When he had come, he had said that he would defeat this person. How could he compete with this person? At this point, no one was thinking about competing anymore. Everyone wanted to see how far Lu Yin could go. In particular, Wu Yao had come to an incredible conclusion. This person wouldn't be able to reach the clouds, right? Baisu swallowed. Was this necessary? He had only wanted to express his goodwill and rope Lu Yin in if possible. He hadn't expected to cause such a big commotion. This was too big. Even if this person stopped now, it would still attract the attention of the ancestors. This was troublesome. If this person still chose Shenwu Plain in the end, he would be a sinner of the frigid immortal sect. Chapter 2271. In the starry sky of the universe there were countless species. Lu Yin experienced one after another. What he experienced the most was life and death, the most terrible was time, the most sorrowful was emotion, and the most joyful was emotion. In the end, he didn't know if his memories as Lu Yin were one of them. Fortunately, whether it was life or death, he could bear it. Ruthless people looked down on emotion but could not see through life and death. Sentient people looked down on life and death but could not forget their emotions. Lu Yin did not need to see through it, he was sober. In the last 1,000 feet he only took 2 steps, 500 feet. Above his head there were already clouds. They were beautiful and looked very soft. Subconsciously he touched them. Below, Wu Yao's eyelids twitched. He touched the clouds, he touched the clouds. This child really touched the clouds. If this news spread, it would definitely shock the starry sky of the tree. Even the ancestors would look down. He looked at the top of his head. The outer realm would not be able to sit still. The more he understood about the sky beyond trial, the more he knew how shocking Lu Yin's actions were at this moment. He touched the clouds but he didn't feel anything. They looked soft and beautiful but they were like a dream. He couldn't feel anything when he put his hand in. He looked down and saw the shocked expressions of Wu Yao and the others, the encouraging eyes of the culinary god, Bai Weiwei's shocked and admiring look, and the infatuated eyes of Nong Xinyang and the others. He took a deep breath and stepped out again, ready to climb the clouds. Wu Yao stared at Lu Yin. It was the last step. Touching the clouds was one level, but whether he could reach the top and become an immortal was another level. Since ancient times, only 7 people had succeeded in reaching the top. The rest were looked down upon by them. This child should not be able to reach the top. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Lu Yin's eyes became dull again. He saw a creature that looked like a grasshopper and then he became a grasshopper. It was a grasshopper with consciousness and nimble movements, but it was instantly trampled to death. He was trampled to death and then he saw another grasshopper and then he appeared in the place where he appeared last time. Lu Yin had a consciousness but it was the consciousness of a grasshopper. The place where he had appeared was a congested street with countless pedestrians walking back and forth. The first time he had appeared he had been trampled to death by a person. This time he had retained the experience of being a dead grasshopper. The moment he appeared he immediately jumped to another place. He had avoided the misfortune of being trampled to death by the previous person, but he couldn't avoid the fate of being trampled to death. This was a congested street. From the perspective of a grasshopper, these people were all colossal creatures. Stepping on them step by step, in his view of life, this was like the sky collapsing and the earth caving in. In the blink of an eye, the grasshopper was trampled to death again, only to be resurrected again. No matter where the grasshopper jumped, it could not escape the misfortune of being trampled to death. It jumped at most 5 times and on the 6th time it was trampled to death. It did not know how to escape from this street. It only knew that it should have been born here and it should have been trampled to death and resurrected repeatedly. Finally, after jumping 7 times, it looked up and saw a person's face. It was a man. Then it jumped again and jumped to the man's feet. The man kicked it away and the huge force shook its body into pieces. Before it died, it saw several people and these people looked exactly the same. It was that man. It was trampled to death again and again. Tried again and again countless times. It could not escape but it could not die. In the grasshopper's consciousness, the people were constantly branded, forming a pressure that was like the sky. Every time it saw the man's face, the grasshopper's movements would subconsciously stop. It was as if it should be trampled to death and hoped to be trampled to death. That face was constantly branded in its heart, appearing repeatedly in its mind. It replaced everything. At this time, murmurs resounded throughout the street. The heavenly Tao's bestowal swallows and spits out hundreds of rivers. The ancient land is harmonious, imitating the high sage. The heavenly Tao does not accept, condense into qi. Leaping through the starry skies, communicating with people. At first the voices were very soft, but as time passed and the grasshopper was trampled to death, the voices grew louder and louder. Finally, for words appeared in the grasshopper's mind, the primogenitor's scripture. Suddenly the grasshopper woke up and knew who he was. He was Lu Yin, and he was undergoing a trial in the realm beyond heaven. He was not a grasshopper. Above his head, a shadow loomed over and a foot stomped down. Lu Yin immediately controlled the grasshopper to escape, and then he jumped onto the person who wanted to trample him to death without hesitation. Along the way, the person raised a hand to slap him. Their movements were very fast and the difference in size was too great. The person moved slightly, and in the grasshopper's eyes, it was enough to envelop the world. However, Lu Yin still avoided it. The murmurs of the primogenitor's scripture grew louder and louder, and the entire street shook. Lu Yin controlled the grasshopper's body and jumped directly onto one of the people's heads. As far as the eye could see, there were countless people who looked exactly the same as him walking hurriedly. Under their feet, the grasshopper's corpse was crushed into pieces. But these people did not care and continued walking, filling the entire street. Lu Yin jumped up and jumped on top of the people's heads. These people wanted to trample him to death, but he wanted to step on their heads. Soon after, under everyone's incredulous gazes, Lu Yin's body passed through the clouds and disappeared. Then he stepped on the clouds and walked out, looking down at the people below. He had completed the Realm Beyond Heaven trial, becoming the 9th cultivator to complete the Realm Beyond Heaven trial and become an Immortal Beyond Heaven cultivator. Everyone stared blankly at Lu Yin, looking up at him. At this moment, even Wu Yao and the culinary god were looking up at him. He had ascended to immortality in one step, and when he looked back he was no longer immortal. Whether it was the cultivators of the Cold Immortal sect or the people of Xian Academy, they all looked at Lu Yin differently, including Bai Weiwei and the others. Human history had developed over a long period of time, and there were countless achievements that seemed possible but were impossible to achieve. The Realm Beyond Heaven trial was one of them. Since its appearance, countless people had attempted it. Although the results were different, there was one result that remained constant. No one had completed it. The years were long and countless eras had changed, but in most people's impression, no one had been able to complete the Realm Beyond Heaven trial. Bai Xianer had appeared in this era, so she had become a legend. Bai Xianer had broken through to the emissary realm and attracted the eternal race's murderous intent, causing the progenitor realm to descend. Therefore she had become an unattainable existence in this era. She was close to a god. At this moment, Lu Yin had completed the Realm Beyond Heaven trial, causing the Cold Immortal sect to fall silent. Whether it was the elders or the disciples, even the half-ancestor Wu Yao and the culinary god, all looked at Lu Yin in silence. Bai Su was the first to react. He immediately ordered the sect to be sealed. No one was allowed to leave and no one was allowed to communicate with the outside world. He wanted to seal the news of Yu Hao's completion of the Realm Beyond Heaven trial in the Cold Immortal sect. This child must not wander outside. He must be a member of the Cold Immortal sect. He represented the next progenitor realm. Suddenly he remembered that this person was a matrix master in Jian, and there was also Gu Yan behind him. If that was the case, he was not just the next progenitor, he might even be the next youngest celestial master of primordial arrays. He was a genius who had both the progenitor and the celestial master of primordial arrays. A genius who could catch up to Bai Xianer. Thinking of this, here Bai Su quickly woke Wu Yao up. It was not that Wu Yao's mental strength was not as strong as Bai Su's, but as a half-ancestor he knew better what it meant for Lu Yin to ascend the clouds. He now looked at Lu Yin as if he was in progenitor realm powerhouse. After being awakened by Bai Su, the first thing he did was to seal the Cold Immortal sect. Unfortunately, they were still a step too late. The lower the cultivation of a disciple, the less knowledge they had of the Realm Beyond Heaven trial, and the faster they woke up. After Lu Yin ascended the clouds, a Melder disciple who had just joined the Cold Immortal sect spread the news. The four scales each had their own spies, and even the seedling garden, the Lu family and Gui Yuan, who had been hiding all this time, all had spies in the Cold Immortal sect. When Yu Hao completed the Realm Beyond Heaven trial, the entire cosmic tree realm exploded. The first to receive the news was the Wang family, and it was the Melder who had spread the news. Half-ancestor Chai suddenly appeared in front of Wang Yan, scaring him so much that his expression changed. He was rather displeased. "Senior Chai, this is my private residence. You've gone too far by coming here." With his status as an array master in Jiyuan, he did not need to worry about Half-Ancestor Chai's status. Half-Ancestor Chai anxiously asked, "Has the family contacted you, Hao? Or did they discuss any conditions?" Wang Yan's brows rose. "Why do you ask?" Half-Ancestor Chai was anxious. "If not, then hurry up and contact the ancestor and think of a way to rope in this Yu Hao. We have to rope him in. He just completed the cold immortal sex realm beyond heaven trial." Wang Yan did not react at first, but then he remembered and was shocked. The realm beyond heaven trial? The trial to become an immortal beyond immortal? Half-Ancestor Chai replied, "That's right. That's why I'm asking if you've contacted the ancestor to rope in you how and what conditions you've proposed. I need to quickly speak with the ancestor and discuss how to rope him in." Wang Yan was still in shock. Since ancient times, only 8 people had completed the realm beyond heaven trial. 5 of them had become progenitors, 2 had died young, and 1 was Bai Xian'er. No one doubted that Bai Xian'er would become a progenitor, as she would definitely do so. Yu Hao was the 9th person. "The ancestor has already contacted him," Wang Yan said. Half-Ancestor Chai was nervous. "Did you treat him seriously? This is related to a progenitor, and don't forget that not only did he complete the realm beyond heaven trial, but he's also an array master in Jiyuan. He's a genius lockbreaker who's qualified to have you contact the ancestor with his lock-breaking talent." Wang Yan's expression changed and he swallowed hard. A genius lockbreaker who had completed the realm beyond heaven trial. Could this person be the next Bai Xian'er? When he thought of this, he contacted the ancestor again. "I'll contact the ancestor right now and make sure that this person stays in my Wang family." On the other side, the White Dragon clan received the news and Long Tian's eyelids twitched. The realm beyond heaven trial. Someone else had completed it besides Bai Xian'er? Long Tian had not attempted the realm beyond heaven trial before because Long Xing, the daughter of the main bloodline and one of the 7 prodigies, had said that the White Dragon clan was not allowed to attempt it. Long Tian had actually wanted to try it, but he had not expected Yu Hao to actually complete it. The 4 young ancestors were considered future progenitors, but this was more of a possibility. If this possibility was defined as 10 out of 10, then they only had a 30% chance. However, someone who had completed the realm beyond heaven trial had a 90% chance. The difference between a 90% chance and a 30% chance was huge. "Thank you. Nantung Jindazin he Sonkuthyechen begging wind updates 4 times a day brothers tip. I'll give it to you." Chapter 2272. Mr. Yu walked out and looked at Long Tian calmly. "Have you reported this to the ancestor?" Long Tian looked at Mr. Yu. "Not yet." "Then report it. The trial of the sky beyond heaven can't be hidden," Mr. Yu said. Their attitude wasn't positive. It wasn't that the White Dragon race didn't want to rope in a future ancestor, but that they couldn't. More accurately, it was Long Tian and Mr. Yu who couldn't rope in. Yu Hao belonged to Xian Academy and could be considered one of the culinary god's people. The grudge between Mr. Yu and the culinary god couldn't be resolved, so Yu Hao might hate him too. From Mr. Yu's point of view, this person was a potential enemy. As for Long Tian, after Long Ku went missing, he immediately found Mr. Yu and received his support. The 2 of them were on the same side, which meant that if the White Dragon race wanted to rope in Yu Hao, it would be disadvantageous for Mr. Yu and Long Tian. The main bloodline of the White Dragon race could be changed at any time, and if a branch bloodline roped in Yu Hao, their bloodline would be in danger. "The trial of the sky beyond heaven is great, but it doesn't mean that you won't die young," Mr. Yu said and left. Long Tian's eyes flashed. Die young? It was too difficult. The 2 people who had died young had their reasons, and this Yu Hao would definitely choose one of the 4 scales. It wasn't likely that he would die young, so there were only 2 paths in front of him. One was to stay with Mr. Yu and become Yu Hao's enemy in the future. If Yu Hao was really roped in, the main bloodline would be changed. The other was to give up on Mr. Yu and focus on roping in Yu Hao. This was the White Dragon race. Even if Yu Hao really became an ancestor, he couldn't really become a member of the White Dragon race. He was just a cultivator with a different surname, which would be of great help to him. If he failed, not only would he fail to obtain Yu Hao, but he would also offend Mr. Yu. Long Tian thought about it and unconsciously looked in Mr. Yu's direction. Mr. Yu couldn't guess what Long Tian was thinking. Of course not. He only had one path, and that was to kill Yu Hao. Mr. Yu didn't expect this to happen. He stood on the mountain peak and looked in the direction of the cold Immortal sect. Master, you're so troublesome. The divine martial sky also received the news. Xia Ziheng, who was still in a daze, immediately rushed to the place where Yu Chuan was imprisoned. Seeing that Yu Chuan was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and immediately contacted the old ancestor. Yu Hao was a different person from the Shenwu realm. Others had tried to rope Yu Hao in only because of the Sky Beyond Heaven trial, but the Shenwu realm had tried to rope Yu Hao in not just because of his lock-breaking talent and the fact that he had completed the Sky Beyond Heaven trial. After ending his conversation with the old ancestor, Xia Ziheng's first order was to capture Xia Zhitong. At the same time, he confirmed the names of all the people involved in the matter of the Yu family. These people were what the divine martial sky had told Yu Hao. Xia Ziheng felt a headache coming on. Ever since Yu Hao had appeared, the things he had done had become more and more sensational. Even the mighty divine martial celestial society had no choice but to find people to avenge him and line up for him to kill. Only Xia Shang had shown such an attitude when he had become a half-step ancestor and inherited the mountains and seas. Unfortunately, Xia Shang didn't appreciate it. Hopefully Yu Hao would be tactful. After the order was given, Xia Ziheng left the Shenwu sky and personally went to the Immortal Frost sect to welcome Yu Hao. He couldn't let the Immortal Frost sect keep him here. At the same time, in the Central Plains, Nongya also received the news and he sighed. Someone else completed the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial? This era is too dazzling, but it's declining after reaching its peak. I hope this person can survive. In the distance, the sword steel stood tall, and Lu Song opened his eyes to see Lu Lu standing in front of him. The Realm Beyond Heaven's trial? He raised his head and looked in the direction of the Immortal Frost sect with a complicated expression. As time passed, the matter of the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial would become more and more apparent. It would only become more and more sensational. At this moment, Lu Yin was just as silent as the Immortal Frost sect. This was because there was another person lying on a cloud in front of him. Even though this person's back was facing Lu Yin, the moment he saw this person, Lu Yin felt as if the sky and earth were collapsing. This person gave off an aura that far surpassed that of a half-step ancestor. Even when he had first come to the cosmic trees and been chased by Wang Si, the despair he had felt back then had not been as great as when he saw this person. This person was a progenitor. He was definitely a progenitor. Lu Yin's heart sank. The Immortal Frost sect, and there was actually a progenitor on a cloud? How could this be? Lu Yin was most afraid of encountering a progenitor. Death's mask might be able to fool a half-step ancestor, but it definitely could not fool a progenitor. Why was there a progenitor here? Many thoughts flashed through Lu Yin's mind, and he subconsciously placed his hand on his cosmic ring. Once his identity was exposed, he would have to ask the Fog Ancestor to come out. He hoped that the Fog Ancestor already had the power of a progenitor. Just like that, Lu Yin stared at the figure lying on his side, not saying anything or moving. After a long time, the culinary god Wu Yao and the rest did not speak. They did not know what was happening on the cloud, as no one had ever seen this scene before. Even when Bai Xianer had completed the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial, only the ancestor had been able to see it. No one knew what would happen after completing the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial, and they all assumed that Lu Yin had experienced something on the cloud. Could this be the reason why one would definitely become a progenitor after completing the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial? Everyone stared at the cloud, wanting to see what was happening. Lu Yin waited for a long time on the cloud, but the figure lying on his side still did not move. He considered whether to leave or stay, and after some thought he simply sat down. Distance was meaningless to a progenitor, and even if he left the frigid Immortal sect, this progenitor could easily catch up to him. Lu Yin wondered who this person was. Based on his clothing and figure, it was a man. Could it be Bai Wang Yuan? There were records of how many progenitors had been born after the astral tree domain separated from the fifth mainland, but the records were not comprehensive. For example, progenitor Wen was a very clear example and Zhongyu was another example. However, there were no clear records of these behemoths. Everyone said that each of the four scales had an ancestor, which made it clear that the frigid Immortal sect's ancestor was Bai Wang Yuan. But if it was Bai Wang Yuan, who had existed since the Daoist sect's era and was one of the 9 mountains and 8 seas, then no one from the frigid Immortal sect had become a progenitor after him? No, if there had been, then where had the other progenitors gone? The most obvious one was someone called Bai Xing who had completed the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial and was one of the 5 progenitors. The outside world did not say that he had died, nor did they say that he had appeared. Where had he gone? Another example was the 4 young progenitors, who were said to be certain to become progenitors. Although that was a bit of a boast, if the 4 scales did not have a progenitor who had become a progenitor after the origin will sacrifice, then how could such a statement appear? The astral tree domain definitely had more than one progenitor that had been publicly announced, but where had the other progenitors gone? A day passed, but the reclining figure did not move. Lu Yin did not move either, and he simply continued to watch. 2 more days passed, but the people below were not in a hurry and they all looked up. Lu Yin continued to watch the figure. Finally, the figure moved. He stood up, stretched, and rubbed his head. He paused and slowly turned around to look at Lu Yin. Lu Yin met the person's gaze. It was a man who looked quite young, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. He looked back at Lu Yin with some curiosity. "Are you new here?" "What?" Lu Yin asked. The man pointed below. "The frigid immortal sect? Are you new here?" "A guest." "Where are you from?" "Xian Academy." "Oh, you completed the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial?" "Yes, I just finished it." "Amazing. You're welcome." After a moment of silence, the man coughed and turned around to face Lu Yin. He smiled. "I'm Bai Xing. What about you?" Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Bai Xing was one of the 9 people who had completed the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial, and one of the 5 who had become progenitors. "Mu Hao." Lu Yin stood up and bowed to Bai Xing. "Greetings, Ancestor Bai." Bai Xing raised a hand to stop him. Don't call me Ancestor Bai. Ancestor Bai is an honorific for Ancestor Wang Yuan. I don't deserve that title." Lu Yin was confused. "Then how should I address you?" Bai Xing smiled. "Call me Ancestor Xing." Lu Yin was speechless. This guy was a bit arrogant. "Junior Yu Hao greets Ancestor Xing." "Just call me Ancestor Xing. There's no need to call me Senior. I'm not much older than you." Bai Xing was very easygoing. Lu Yin did not stare at Bai Xing as he was wondering if Bai Xing had seen through Death Face's disguise. If he had, would he have exposed him? Did he know Lu Yin? Many questions popped up in Lu Yin's mind, the most common of which was how to escape. "Congratulations on completing the Realm Beyond Heaven's trial, which means that you've reached the peak of your life. From now on, the astral tree realm will be yours to roam freely." Bai Xing smiled and gestured for Lu Yin to sit down. "Being able to sit on these clouds is a symbol of our group. Don't waste it. If you have time in the future, come visit more often. I'm actually quite bored." "Ancestor Xing stays here all year round?" Lu Yin was surprised. Bai Xing replied, "Not really, I come here occasionally. It's mainly because I find it interesting to see those fellows below trying to climb up but not being able to. Look, aren't those fellows looking up at us with funny expressions? Haha." Lu Yin followed Bai Xing's gaze and saw Wu Yao and the food god. "Including you, there are already 9 people. It's a pity that most of them are dead. Before you was Bai Xiener, but that girl is very quiet. Talking to her will suffocate you. It's boring." "Young man, say something," Bai Xing urged. Lu Yin didn't know what to say, but he was afraid that he would say something wrong. He even felt guilty. Ancestor Xing, no, Ancestor Xing, shouldn't you be in the sovereign realm?" Bai Xing smiled. "It seems like you don't know much about the astral tree realm. Not all progenitors are in the sovereign realm. Only Ancestor Bai and the others are there, and they're the front line against the Eternals. As for us..." He pointed at the sky. "We're in the outer realm." Lu Yin's eyes flashed. The outer realm? He had heard of the outer realm before. It was the space outside the mother tree that surrounded it. The mother tree existed in the universe, and the entire astral tree realm relied on it. Outside the mother tree in the starry sky was the outer realm. For example, the stars that Lu Yin had seen in the top realm belonged to the outer realm. The most famous one was the star called Xianxia, which could only be seen in the Blue Moon District. It was one of the stars in the outer realm and could only be seen in the Blue Moon District. "Thank you. Nantung Jindazan Hisonkwe, thank you for your support, brothers. I'll add more chapters, thank you." Chapter 2273. You'll understand the outer realms once you become a half-ancestor. It's just a matter of time. By the way, you said that you're from Xian Academy. How's that place doing? I heard that it's going to be divided by the 4 cardinal scales? Bai Xing asked. Lu Yin had not expected Bai Xing to be so direct. The 4 cardinal scales were indeed planning to divide Yi Xian Academy, but they had to do it step by step. They're still dividing it, but they haven't succeeded yet. They're still thinking of ways to get a spot for the Mountain Sea. A spot for the Mountain Sea? That's meaningless. Do they think that inheriting the Mountain Sea is that simple? The 9 mountains and 8 seas only appear in one era, and they won't appear before or after that. We don't have any plans for the Mountain Sea, and it would be best if they could inherit it, but if they can't, then so be it. There aren't that many half-ancestors or progenitors who can try. The youngest person to inherit the Mountain Sea in history was an emissary, but that was only a legend. Only progenitor Qin inherited the Mountain Sea when he was a half-ancestor. Lu Yin smiled bitterly. They're not as open-minded as you, progenitor Sheng. They're all fighting over it. Don't blame them. Kid, are you interested in joining the frigid immortal sect? Bai Xing stared at Lu Yin with interest and asked. Lu Yin did not know if he should be relieved or worried. Did Bai Xing's question mean that he had not seen through Death Face's disguise? Or had he seen through Death Face's disguise but did not recognize him? Or was this a joke? If Bai Xing recognized him, then he would know that Lu Yin would not be able to join the frigid immortal sect. Lu Yin looked at Bai Xing, but he could not tell what he was thinking. What's with that expression? Do you have some enmity with the frigid immortal sect? Don't worry about it, I can help you with anything, Bai Xing said heroically. Lu Yin pursed his lips. This was something that could not be resolved. I won't hide it from you, senior. I'm Yu Hao and my wife is Xia Zitong from the Shenwu continent. Bai Xing was shocked. You're the son-in-law of the Shenwu continent? Lu Yin nodded. Bai Xing was helpless. Then there's nothing I can do. The Shenwu continent is quite lucky to find someone like you as a son-in-law. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he told Bai Xing about the enmity between the Shenwu continent and the Yu family. Everyone who heard about this for the first time had the same expression on their faces. It was strange, extremely strange, but also strange and natural. Bai Xing choked on his words for a long time before sighing. The Xia family is truly ruthless. They would even use their own family members to tarnish the reputation of the Yu family. At the same time, they have also tarnished their own reputation. Ancestor Bai is right. Ever since the incident with Ancestor Qin, the Xia family has been riding on the path of shamelessness. They no longer care about their reputation. He then looked deeply at Lu Yin. So will you return to Shenwu Plain now? Based on your achievements in the Realm Upon Heaven trial, that Xia Zitong is bound to die. The Xia clan will personally hand her over to you to deal with. To put it bluntly, the Xia clan is willing to sacrifice anyone outside of the main branch. For the sake of an outsider immortal, they're willing to sacrifice all of their branches. Lu Yin frowned. I don't want to join such a family, but grandfather is in their hands. Bai Xing pondered. The Xia family's ancestral worship ceremony is approaching, and it's also the final deadline that they've given me. Actually, I've been getting along well with Bai Weiwei recently. If possible, I'd rather join the frigid immortal sect, Lu Yin said. Bai Xing rubbed his head. It's a bit troublesome. If it was before, the sect would have paid a price, and Ancestor Bai might have been able to personally rescue your grandfather. But now that you've completed the Realm Upon Heaven trial, Xia Shenji definitely won't let you off. Lu Yin stood up and bowed to Bai Xing. Possible, please help me rescue my grandfather. I will definitely join the frigid immortal sect and protect the sect's interests with my life. Bai Xing stretched again and stood up. He looked around. Realm Upon Heaven, outsider immortal. Do you want to take a walk with me? As far as the eye could see, the two of them could only see clouds that covered the entire frigid immortal sect. However, they couldn't see anything outside of the sect. This was a scenery that belonged only to the frigid immortal sect. Walking on the clouds was equivalent to stepping on everyone in the frigid immortal sect. Progenitors had the right to do so, and Lu Yin as an envoy also had the right to do so. You'll have to go through a lot to walk on these clouds. It's like climbing, Lu Yin asked. Bai Xing's lips curled up as he pointed below. One cloud, one step into immortality. Realm Upon Heaven, outsider immortal. Only the 9 of us can hear this. Every cloud has to be climbed? Lu Yin was shocked. Bai Xing nodded. Yes and no. You don't need to climb from the bottom, but going from one cloud to another is like going through the entire process of climbing at the same time. That's why it's called one step, one immortal. That's what will determine who's stronger and who's weaker. Let's see how many steps you can take. As he spoke, he raised his foot and instantly arrived above another cloud. Then he walked out step by step. Every step is a cycle. Young man, why don't you walk with me? Lu Yin's lips twitched. One step, one reincarnation, one immortal. If he had the time he would be willing to try, but he didn't have the time right now. The people below were still waiting, and now that he had become an outsider immortal, the Xia family probably couldn't sit still any longer. The later he waited, the less time he would have to roll the die alone. So that's how it is. Forget it for now. This junior will have to disappoint senior. Lu Yin declined. Bai Xing smiled. I'm leaving as well. He looked up. How many ancestral bones are buried in the outer realms? Perhaps one day you'll go there as well. With that, he stepped onto a cloud once more, and then his figure blurred and vanished. Lu Yin looked up. The outer realm? Where were the ancestral bones buried? Where were those unknown progenitors? Below, everyone looked up for a very long time. They watched for as long as Lu Yin had been on the cloud until he came down. Mr. Haoyu is coming down, someone exclaimed. Nong Xinyang was excited. Bai Weiwei and the rest all stepped forward and stared at the sky. Xia Shenguang, Wang Xiaofan and the rest had complicated expressions. This person's status would no longer be the same after reaching realm upon heaven. Even they didn't dare to slight him. Gong gong gong, congratulations Mr. The little fatty shouted excitedly. Congratulations Mr. Haoyu. Qing Feng was also excited. Congratulations Mr. Haoyu, the students shouted. The frozen immortal sect's disciples looked on enviously. Lu Yin landed on the ground, and Wu Yao was the first to step forward with a warm smile. Congratulations Mr. Haoyu for completing the realm upon heaven trial and becoming an immortal in one step. Lu Yin replied politely. On the other side, a group of students from Xian Academy surrounded Lu Yin and asked him what he had experienced. Only those who had completed the realm upon heaven trial would have memories of it. However, Lu Yin didn't say anything. Before the realm upon heaven trial, the frozen immortal sect had made them swear not to divulge any information once they completed the trial. Congratulations Mr. Haoyu. Mr. Tang exclaimed. Lu Yin was exhausted. I was lucky, really lucky. Completing the trial on your first attempt isn't something that can be described as luck, Mr. Wei said with a smile. The culinary god sighed. At the Wang family, you showed off your unparalleled lock-breaking talent. At the White Dragon clan, you showed off your control of the profound creation realm's astral source. You saw through the blood pool and forced the White Dragon clan to lower their heads. And here at the Frozen Immortal sect, you even completed the realm upon heaven trial. This trial isn't for the students but for you, ha. Lu Yin was speechless. I don't know why it's like this. Bai Su walked behind Wu Yao with an ugly expression as she watched Lu Yin speak with the students from Xian Academy. It's been leaked. Many people know that Yu Hao completed the realm upon heaven trial. Wu Yao wasn't surprised. That's normal. Don't let them leave the sect for now. The ancestor will handle it. Bai Su nodded and looked at Lu Yin with a complicated expression. Wu Yao had only wanted to express his goodwill and see if he could pull this person over to his side. However, he hadn't expected that he would end up creating an outsider immortal. Many years later, this person might become an ancestor on the same level as Bai Xiener, and he might even become the youngest origin array master. Just thinking about it was terrifying. No one would give up on someone who had a 90% chance of becoming an ancestor, even if that person hadn't passed the 3 stages. Compared to the realm upon heaven trial, passing the 3 stages wasn't that important. After all, one could pass the 3 stages in the future and it didn't have to be at the Enlighter realm. However, in the realm upon heaven trial, half-ancestors were the same as other cultivators, and their success rate wouldn't increase based on their realm. Originally, after the trial ended, the group from Xian Academy could head to Shenwu Plain, but because the frigid immortal sect was forcing them to stay, even the culinary god couldn't leave and could only stay for the time being. Everyone knew that the frigid immortal sect's goal was Lu Yin. The culinary god reminded him, don't be courteous with them. With your current status, just treat yourself as a half-ancestor, and they'll do their best to rope you in. After completing the realm upon heaven trial, Lu Yin would have had the confidence to negotiate with the frigid Immortal sect. However, because of Bai Xing's appearance, he only wanted to leave. After all, Bai Xing could definitely see through Deathface's disguise, and only the heavens knew if he would discover Lu Yin's true identity. However, even if he wanted to leave, the frigid Immortal sect wouldn't let him, which left him with no choice. Mr. Hao Yu, as long as you join the frigid Immortal sect, we'll do our best to bring your grandfather Yu Chuan out. Xinwu Plain also won't risk offending a future progenitor. Also, the frigid Immortal sect will provide all the resources you need to pass the 3 stages. From the 4th origin tribulation to the half-ancestor realm, the frigid Immortal sect will guarantee. Wu Yao pulled Lu Yin aside and explained everything. Lu Yin felt a headache coming on and he hurriedly stopped Wu Yao. I understand what Senior Wu Yao is saying, but as long as my grandfather is still in Xinwu Plain, I won't be able to join the frigid Immortal sect. However, I personally prefer the frigid Immortal sect. Wu Yao also felt a headache coming on. He was a ruthless person, and even his own parents would not hesitate to give up when faced with such a choice, let alone his grandfather. However, Yu Hao clearly didn't want to give up, which was troublesome. As a cultivator, there are times when you have to make choices, Wu Yao said. Junior doesn't understand what senior means. You know why Yu Chuan was taken to the Star Alliance back then? Your father made his choice and Yu Chuan made his own. Now it's your turn. Chapter 2274. Lu Yin's expression turned ugly. My father's choice caused the Yu family to become what it is now. But he also protected you, Wu Yao said. If not for that, you wouldn't even have had the chance to participate in the Heavens Beyond trial. How many geniuses in the cosmic tree realm can complete the trial? If everyone in the starry sky of trees had tried, the number of people who could complete the trial might have doubled. Unfortunately, they were unlucky, but you are different. Your father and grandfather worked together to make you who you are. You should not let them down. Lu Yin looked at Wu Yao. They made me what I am, so I should repay them. Wu Yao's tone was cold. You have to repay the Yu family. You have to repay the past and build the future Yu family, not just your grandfather. I believe that your grandfather also hopes that you can make the right choice, even if it means sacrificing himself. Lu Yin frowned. I can pretend that I didn't hear Senior's words. Please leave. Wu Yao was annoyed. If this kid hadn't completed the trial, he wouldn't have said so much. This kid's attitude was enough for him to kill him. After Wu Yao left, Bai Su came and took turns persuading Lu Yin. They didn't think that there was much hope for Yu Chuan. Xinwu Plain wasn't stupid. Before the trial, they had deliberately transferred Yu Chuan from the Star Alliance to Xinwu Plain. Now they were watching him even more closely, and Xia Ziheng might even personally guard him. Even the cold Immortal sect wasn't confident that they could take Yu Chuan out. Since they couldn't take Yu Chuan away, they could only persuade Lu Yin to give up. However, Lu Yin was stubborn, so Bai Su could only withdraw. They wouldn't be able to force Xian Academy to stay for long, especially since Xia Ziheng had already come to the cold Immortal sect. Even if the cold Immortal sect tried to delay Xia Ziheng, they wouldn't be able to hold him back for long. The gentle light emitted by the clouds dimmed a lot, and the cold Immortal sect was naturally divided into day and night. When night fell, Lu Yin and the culinary god sat at a stone table and told him about Wu Yao and Bai Su's conditions. The culinary god laughed. The resources needed to break through the 3 stages are not a condition but a necessity. The only reason they want to rope you in is because you have the possibility of becoming an ancestor. If they don't provide you with the resources needed to break through the 3 stages, how can you become an ancestor? As for your grandfather Yu Chuan. He paused for a moment before continuing. I won't advise you to give up, but if you don't want to join the Divine Martial Society, Yu Chuan will be their weapon against you. Even if you become an ancestor in the future, Yu Chuan will still be your weakness. I want to go to Xinwu Plain immediately. The culinary god thought that Lu Yin was missing Yu Chuan and he said, I'll talk to Wu Yao and think of a way to leave. However, the frigid Immortal sect won't let you go so easily, so you must be prepared. Lu Yin nodded and he couldn't help but glance at the clouds in the sky. He was too worried about Bai Xing, and if Bai Xing found out that he was Zhou Xian, the two of them could just wait for a war to break out. Then he could forget about the Star Alliance in the Red Garden, and this trip would have been for nothing. In a certain region of the top realm, Xia Ziheng was furious. Get out here. Don't think that I don't know what you're trying to do. You want to delay me? Impossible. With that he charged out. Down below, one of the elders had blood dripping from his mouth. We've suffered a huge loss this time. The frigid immortal sect said they were going to stop Xia Ziheng, but that Xia Ziheng went crazy. We've suffered a huge loss, a huge loss. With that, his inner world erupted. Xia Ziheng's eyelids twitched. The more the frigid immortal sect tried to stop him, the more it proved that they were determined to rope in Yu Hao. He was most worried that Yu Hao would give up on Yuchuan. Then Xinwu Plain would have no advantage over the frigid immortal sect, and they might even become enemies because of the Yu family. Xinwu Plain definitely did not want to see this happen. They could not become mortal enemies with an outer immortal. On the second and third days, various people from the frigid immortal sect took turns persuading Lu Yin. Even Bai Weiwei came by several times, and her words revealed that she was willing to marry him. This completely suppressed Lu Yin. The frigid immortal sect was willing to do anything to win over an outer immortal, and they were even willing to part with Bai Weiwei. He felt like he had underestimated his own worth. Perhaps if he pointed at Wu Yao's nose and scolded him right now, Wu Yao would still be able to endure it. Lu Yin asked the fog ancestor to come out. He had not dared to do this because of Bai Xing for fear of being discovered, but now he felt like he had to try. It was rare for him to come to the frigid immortal sect, and if he did not do it now, it would be even more difficult in the future. The mountains and seas? The fog ancestor immediately looked up at the clouds and cried out in surprise. Lu Yin was surprised and looked up as well. The mountains and seas again? The fog ancestor nodded. By Wangyuan's mountains and seas. Those clouds. Lu Yin was shocked. The fog ancestor said, "That's right. Those are Bai Wangyuan's mountains and seas." "Where is this? The frigid immortal sect?" Lu Yin nodded. He had not expected those clouds to be the mountains and seas. Did that mean that the outer sky trial was a trial given by Bai Wangyuan's mountains and seas? Then was that a trial given by the mountains and seas or by Bai Wangyuan? It should be a trial given by Bai Wangyuan. Otherwise, the mountains and seas would not have appeared. Lu Yin suppressed his shock at the mountains and seas and asked the fog ancestor to see if anyone was monitoring them. "There's a progenitor here named Bai Xing." The fog ancestor looked around and shook her head. "There's no progenitor here." Lu Yin raised his brows. "Is there anyone above the clouds?" "I don't know if there's anyone above, but there's definitely no one monitoring us. Or do you want me to investigate the entire frigid immortal sect? We might be discovered by the source box array or by the mountains and seas," the fog ancestor said. Lu Yin said, "Then forget it. I'll have to trouble you again this time." The fog ancestor crossed her arms and looked outside with interest. "It's no trouble at all. I like to trouble Bai Wangyuan." Lu Yin did not understand. "Senior, do you have a grudge with Bai Wangyuan?" "No, but that guy is very sinister. I don't know if I've been tricked before, but I'll just pretend that I have," the fog ancestor said matter-of-factly. Lu Yin blinked. Was that even possible? He could not guess what this woman was thinking. Even if she was a progenitor, she was still a woman. Lu Yin shook his head, took out Mount Supreme and released Yu Qin. When Yu Qin saw the fog ancestor, she felt an urge to kneel and worship her, and her expression became even more respectful. The fog ancestor looked at Lu Yin strangely. "How many people did you capture?" Lu Yin pursed his lips. "Not many." He then looked at Yu Qin. "We've arrived at the frigid immortal sect." Yu Qin was shocked and looked up at the sky. They had indeed arrived at the frigid immortal sect. However, she was not excited, nor did she rejoice. Even if they had arrived at the frigid immortal sect, she would not be free. Lu Yin would not let her go. "I remember you saying that there's a very secretive place in the frigid immortal sect with a recording device. Take me there," Lu Yin said. Yu Chen's expression changed. "The Cloud Forest Tower is one of the most heavily guarded places in the frigid immortal sect. Half-ancestor Wu Yao is personally overseeing it. We'll definitely be discovered if we go there." Lu Yin laughed. "With Senior leading the way, even Bai Wangyuan won't be able to discover us." Yu Chen looked at the fog ancestor in shock. Lu Yin did not seem like someone who would spout nonsense. Did that mean that this person had an ability that even Ancestor Bai could not discover? Wasn't that the progenitor realm? The fog ancestor liked being praised, especially when Lu Yin said that even Bai Wangyuan could not discover her. "Don't worry, no one will discover us. Tell me the location." Yuchen suppressed the shock in her heart and told him the location. Not long after, the two of them headed towards the Cloud Forest Tower under the cover of a mirror. Lu Yin did not know how powerful the Fog Ancestor was, but he was certain that a half-martial ancestor would not be able to discover their whereabouts. Lu Yin was worried about Bai Xing, but since Bai Xing had said that he wanted to return to the outer realm, Lu Yin hoped that he was not around. Of course, he had also prepared for the worst. If the frigid Immortal sect discovered him, he could just join them as Yu Hao. The frigid Immortal sect might not do anything to him because of the Cloud Forest Tower. They were even willing to give Bai Weiwei, a direct descendant, to him. A mere outsider Immortal would be welcomed by the frigid Immortal sect as long as he did not reveal his true identity. Of course, the final outcome would depend on the value of the Cloud Forest Tower. Not long after, Lu Yin arrived at the Cloud Forest Tower. The Cloud Forest Tower looked like a very ordinary white tower from the outside. It stood in the middle of the lake and was not very tall. "Are you sure it's here?" Lu Yin was suspicious. Yuchen replied, "I've been here with junior ancestor Wu Yao before. There's also an independent sourcebox array here." "Did Bai Xiaohong tell you about the secrets here?" Junior ancestor did not say anything. He only mentioned that this is one of the most important places in the sect. Lu Yin stared at the Cloud Forest Tower. One of the most important places? Bai Xianer was in seclusion all year round. Could she be here? He did not want to run into her. Even though he had never interacted with Bai Xianer, he knew how difficult it was to deal with her. The culinary god, the myriad Dao ancestor, and even the Elysium sect masters would not be able to find the Fog ancestor, but he was not so sure about Bai Xianer. Could this be where Bai Xianer is in seclusion? Yuchen was certain. Impossible. If it was, Wu Yao would not be here. That was true. He looked at the Fog ancestor who did not directly lead them to the Cloud Forest Tower. Instead, he seemed to be observing something. Not long after, the Fog ancestor felt strange. "There's a sourcebox array here, but why does it feel like it's Huiwen's doing?" "Huiwen's sourcebox array?" Lu Yin was shocked. The Fog ancestor shook his head. "It looks like it, but it also doesn't. Forget it, let's go. This sourcebox array can't stop me. Don't worry." He then led Lu Yin and Yuchen across the lake and into the Cloud Forest Tower. Lu Yin and Yuchen saw Wu Yao under Yuchen's cover. They passed right in front of Wu Yao and he did not sense them at all. Yuchen looked at the Fog ancestor with reverence, and the Fog ancestor enjoyed her gaze. She then circled around Wu Yao once more. Lu Yin's face twitched. This woman. The Cloud Forest Tower was not a major world like Lu Yin had guessed, and it also did not have a space similar to a Pawn civilization. It was just a small tower that was a few stories tall. It looked very ordinary and there were no bookshelves inside. Instead, there were stones protruding from the walls, and each stone had a scroll or a stone slip that was made of special materials to preserve text. Lu Yin confirmed with the Fog ancestor that there were no problems, and then he took one and looked at it. Chapter 2275. It was a scroll made from some kind of beast hide that could be stored for a long time. There was a diagram drawn on the hide that depicted a specific location and nothing else. Lu Yin showed the diagram to Yuchen. She replied, "This should be the location where the astral liquid from the mother tree is being extracted." Extracting astral liquid? The frozen Immortal sect is doing that now? The Fog ancestor was furious. Yuchen nodded. It should be. The Fog ancestor was furious. These bastards actually have designs on the mother tree. The mother tree is a barrier that protects humanity, and if anything happens to it, humanity will be finished. No matter how many progenitors we have, it's useless. Senior Lu Tianyi abhorred the practice of extracting astral liquid, and he strictly forbade the Fifth Mainland from doing so. There was even friction between the Fifth Mainland and the Sixth Mainland because of this. Lu Yin replied, "The 4 Libras are doing it and I even found out about it once." The Fog ancestor gritted his teeth. "I'll settle the score with them." Lu Yin put the beast hide back and took a few steps forward before picking up another one. He glanced at it and then looked at Yuchen. "There used to be a behemoth in the middle realm called the Central Prime?" Yuchen nodded. The Zhongyuan sect was formed by a few rogue cultivators, and its founder was a rogue cultivator at the Ancestor realm. He once completed the Heavens Beyond trial in my cold Immortal sect, and he was the one who established the Zhongyuan sect. Lu Yin put down the scroll. The Central Prime had been destroyed in a single night, and that progenitor had disappeared. No one knew what had happened, and even the Lu family had investigated the matter, but they had not been able to find anything. In reality, the progenitor who had founded the Central Prime had gone to the Outer Realm, and he had been forced by the Frozen Immortal sect to replace one of the Frozen Immortal sect's spots in the Outer Realm. The entire Central Prime had been destroyed by the Frozen Immortal sect. The Frozen Immortal sect had been able to force that progenitor to go to the Outer Realm because that person had joined the Frozen Immortal sect after completing the Heavens Beyond trials. The Frozen Immortal sect had done their best to nurture him into a progenitor in order to obtain a spot in the Outer Realm. As for what a spot in the Outer Realm was, there was no record of it. It only stated that after that independent cultivator had gone to the Outer Realm, he had never appeared again. Zhongyuan was the predecessor of the current Roots organization. When Zhongyuan was destroyed, only a few important people died. The rest were thrown to the mortal world and became the current Roots organization. Lu Yin picked up another stone slip and read through it. This stone slip recorded an incident from the era of the Daoist sect, and it involved the Wang, Lu and Lu families. These were all old cases, and there were many things that happened regardless of who was in the right or wrong. Regardless of which family it was, there would always be things that could not be brought to light, and the Lu family was no exception. The frigid immortal sect's secrets were recorded here, and Lu Yin read them with great interest. He knew quite a few things about the frigid immortal sect, but most of them were meaningless due to the passage of time. He wanted to find out more about the Lu family. Unknowingly, a few hours had passed and the sun was about to rise. When the sun rose, someone from the cold immortal sect would definitely come looking for him. The Cloud Forest Tower wasn't that big, but it would still take a few days to go through all the books and documents. Even though there were many things here that interested him, he still decided to look for things related to the Lu family. Lu Yin only read the beginning of many of the documents before putting them down and moving on to the next one. He searched floor by floor until he finally found 4 words. White Dragon Overturning. Lu Yin hurriedly opened the stone slip, and there were only 4 words at the top. White Dragon Overturning. As the stone slip opened, lines of text appeared. They were not connected words but rather just names. They were Yellow Springs, Prison Lock, Frigid Immortal Fruit and Madman Lu. Lu Yin looked at the stone slip. What did these names represent? The White Dragon Overturning represented the White Dragon tribe, but what about the Yellow Springs? Who did it represent? What did Prison Lock represent? He knew that the Frigid Immortal Fruit represented the Frigid Immortal sect. But did that mean that Madman Lu was the traitor of the Lu family? This stone slip did not have a complete list of names and it only contained these names. Lu Yin stared at the 2 words and the only thing he could think of was Burial Garden. That was because Burial Garden contained the Yellow Springs Sea. What was the connection between the Yellow Springs here and the Yellow Springs Sea in Burial Garden? Lu Yin muttered to himself. He could not figure it out, so he looked for the Fog Ancestor. Yellow Springs? Isn't that in Burial Garden? The Fog Ancestor was surprised. Lu Yin was hopeful. Senior, do you know what the Yellow Springs is? The Fog Ancestor shook his head. I know that it's very powerful and even progenitors don't want to touch it. However, I don't know where it came from or how it was formed. Senior, do you know anything about Burial Garden? Lu Yin asked. The Fog Ancestor thought for a moment. Burial Garden seems to include some of the important regions of the first 4 continents, and there are also some important people buried there. Even in our era, burial gardens rarely appeared. I went there once, but after I experienced some danger I stopped. After I became a progenitor, I spent all my time researching other things, so I didn't have time to go there. Lu Yin was disappointed, but he tried to guess. If these 5 names represented the 5 families, then Madman Lu was definitely the traitor of the Lu family. The White Dragon Overturning represented the White Dragon tribe, the Frigid Immortal Fruit represented the Frigid Immortal sect, and the Yellow Springs and Prison Lock represented the Wang family and Shenwu Plain. This also explained why these 4 families were called the 4 sides of the scale. Right, the Yellow Springs. Lu Yin recalled that Mr. Wei had told him that the Wang family didn't mine ore, but rather a yellow liquid. Could this yellow liquid be the same as the Yellow Springs Sea in Burial Garden? The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. The Yellow Springs represented the Wang family, and the Prison Lock represented Shenwu Plain. The White Dragon Overturning wasn't the only thing that had been used to expel the Lu family. The 4 sides of the scale had also contributed, but the most famous one was still the white dragon overturning. It's almost dawn, Yuchen said. Lu Yin looked outside and his eyes flashed as he took out Mount Supreme. Yuchen thought that he was going to imprison her inside and she was right. However, he also released Xiaxing's clone at the same time. Xiaxing's clone looked around in confusion, and just as he was about to speak, Lu Yin asked, "Can you sense the location of the main body?" Xiaxing's clone nodded solemnly. Yes. Lu Yin nodded and locked him inside once more. He then trapped Long Ku here as well. With the Mist Ancestor's power, Wu Yao wouldn't be able to discover them for the time being. Finally, Lu Yin left the Cloud Forest Tower under the Mist Ancestor's protection and returned to his residence. Lu Yin could release Long Ku, but he couldn't release Wang Zheng. Wang Zheng knew that he was the one who had taken action, but Long Ku didn't. At the same time, in the distant Shenwu plain, Xiaxing suddenly stood up. He had sensed the location of his clone, and he looked in a certain direction. It was the Frigid Immortal sect. Even though there was a huge area in that direction, Xiaxing's first thought was the Frigid Immortal sect. He immediately contacted Xia Ziheng. "Half-Ancestor Ziheng, I can sense the clone's location," Xiaxing said. On the other side, Xia Ziheng was being dragged around and he was extremely frustrated. "What did you say? You can sense the clone's location?" Or in the direction of the Frigid Immortal sect. Xia Ziheng's expression changed. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. I don't know if it's in the Frigid Immortal sect." "Yes, but it's definitely in the direction of the Frigid Immortal sect." However, to Xia Ziheng, this was no different from confirming that the clone was in the Frigid Immortal sect. He gritted his teeth. "I'll investigate." A half-ancestor was trying to delay him, which was much more disgusting than fighting him. He was completely enraged and he would definitely vent his anger on the Frigid Immortal sect. Lu Yin had only released Xiaxing's clone in passing, and he hadn't thought about the consequences. In any case, he would destroy the four-way scales as much as he could, especially after seeing the stone tablet. His hatred for the four-way scales had increased by another level. He returned to his residence and not long after, Wu Yao came looking for him almost one after the other. To Wu Yao, their meeting had only been yesterday, but to Lu Yin it had only just happened. "Senior Wu Yao, when can we leave?" Lu Yin asked. Wu Yao replied, "There's no rush. What does Mr. Hao Yu think of the Frigid Immortal sect's ancestor by?" Lu Yin's expression was solemn. "He's a progenitor who protects the human race. He's naturally respected." Wu Yao was satisfied. "Ancestor Bai would like to speak with you." When he heard that Bai Wangyuan wanted to speak with him, Lu Yin's first reaction was to assume that Bai Xing hadn't said anything. If Bai Wangyuan and the others knew that Lu Yin had met with Bai Xing, then it was unlikely that they would speak with him again. Even though he had completed the Realm Beyond Heaven trial, he was still not worthy of two progenitors from the Frigid Immortal sect showing up. For example, the Wang family and the White Dragon clan had tried to rope in the students from Yi Xian Academy, but the Frigid Immortal sect had suppressed them. This was the Frigid Immortal sect's style. "Ancestor Bai wants to speak with me?" Lu Yin pretended to be shocked. In reality, ever since he had met the Fog Ancestor, he was no longer surprised by the presence of progenitors. He had been surprised that Wang Fan had contacted him because Wang Fan was the first progenitor to speak with him in the Cosmic Tree realm. Now that he thought about it, the Frigid Immortal sect had Bai Xing, so the Wang family might have other progenitors as well, but no one knew about them. Wu Yao left the Cloud Connection Stone behind and left. Lu Yin looked at the stone and fell into deep thought. The Cloud Connection Stone trembled and then a voice spoke. Just like Wang Fan, there was no image. "I am Bai Wangyuan." Lu Yin respectfully said, "Junior Yu Hao greets Ancestor Bai." Bai Wangyuan's voice was calm, neither gentle nor strict. He sounded just like an ordinary person. "I've learned about you. What are the conditions for joining my Frigid Immortal sect?" Lu Yin thought about it. "My grandfather Yuchuan." Bai Wangyuan was silent for a moment. "Shenwu Plain controls Yuchuan. Will you definitely join them?" This question was immediately thrown to Lu Yin. Regardless of whether it was Bai Xing, Wu Yao, or Bai Su, they had all tried their best to rope Lu Yin in. Wu Yao had even said that Lu Yin should give up on Yuchuan, but when it came to Bai Wangyuan, this question was thrown to Lu Yin himself. Join Shenwu Plain? Or not? This was the Frigid Immortal sect. If Lu Yin said that he would definitely join Shenwu Plain, Then although the frigid Immortal sect would not do anything, it was hard to say what they would do. Lu Yin had yet to rescue the Star Alliance and Hong Yuanhua, so he did not want any accidents to happen. Ancestor Bai, what do you think I should do? Lu Yin threw the question back at Bai Wangyuan. Bai Wangyuan directly said, give up on Yuchuan and I guarantee that he will live. Once you become a progenitor, Shenwu Plain will release him. Thank you. Nantung Jindazen Hisoge, thanks for your support and rewards. I'll add more chapters.